At the beginning of the story, we learn that the main character, after a lot of time and hard work, has finally managed to slay the ultimate boss of the game he was playing with his partners. All was going well until in real life, the main character clutched his heart and fell down. He had suffered a heart attack. He was suffering from issues, so he went to the doctors who told him that he only had about 3 years to live. He was diagnosed with a new and incurable heart disease, leaving him with no choice of getting well again. They told him that the next time he suffers a heart attack, it will be game over for him. So, the main character decided to quit his job and do what he likes to do to enjoy his remaining life. He put all of his efforts and love to a virtual reality MMO game called Broken Balance Online, or BBO. He played the game with all his heart. He didn't have the physical reflexes to keep up with other players, but he amassed an amazing amount of experience and knowledge about the game. And it all came to a crescendo when the main character and his crew finally managed to defeat a boss that has been considered impossible to beat for the last 3 years of the game. He wanted to live on and enjoy this moment and continue playing the game for longer, but alas, this was all she wrote. So, with tears in his eyes, and with his crewmates bombarding him with messages, asking why he had logged off, the main character sends a message telling everyone that he is thankful to them for everything. As he closes his eyes for the last time, the main character hopes to live a life full of happiness if he ever gets another shot at life again. Suddenly, he wakes up in bed and notices something strange. He gets a full flashback of everything that has ever happened in his life, from the beginning to the end. He wondered just why that was happening until the final moment occurred to him. His final wish was to live happily if he got another shot at life, so that is what happened. He has been reincarnated in another world, but his memories from his past life are still intact. Following this, we get to learn that the main character is called Eldo in this universe and that he is the 4th son of a lower-ranked noble in this world. He does have quite bad luck here too, as no one in his family talks to him. The only exception to this is one of his brothers, Rado. Everyone else just refuses to talk to him at all. This is said to be because when Eldo was born in the world, his parents suffered from an extended period of deharvestation, giving him the unwanted tag of the unlucky kid. Despite that, they have only stopped talking to him and have not kicked him out of the house yet. This has to do with the fact that Eldo is still a minor in this world. However, that was soon going to change as he is going to turn 15 tomorrow, making him an adult by the world standard. Tomorrow, he will go through the coming-of-age ceremony, before being banished from the city and being left alone on his own. However, that may not be a bad thing at all. After all, the world that Eldo now lives in is eerily similar to that of the Broken Balance online game world. In that game, the same coming-of-age ceremony would be done as well. There would also be magic skills and jobs. Once outside and on his own, Eldo will need to look for a job, and jobs are not the same as they are in the usual human world. For example, instead of jobs like carpenter and engineer in this world, the jobs are that of a magician or a swordsman among many other professions. This is the same thing as Broken Balance Online, as the skills here are the same as well. The first skill a swordsman learns is the whirlwind slash, and the first skill a magician learns is the magic ball. Even the system in which these magic skills are used are exactly the same as the game. Eldo got to know this thanks to his brothers showing off to him. Currently, Eldo's profession is that of a novice. A novice is basically someone who has no real job. That being said, even novices can have skills. So Eldo decides to try it out. He does so, and performs the self-heal magic trick. It is a low-level skill that anyone can use to heal small wounds. The magic working properly confirmed it to Eldo that the system of this world is the same as the BBO system. However, he does also note that there is a major difference between this world and the game world. The difference being that the people of this world suffer from an awful lack of knowledge. For example, the magic skill he just used, self-heal, is a very basic skill that is used by anyone. Because it is so basic, the magic energy consumption is quite low on this one, and it can still come off as handy. He recalls seeing a kid hurting his knee, and an elderly lady helped the kid by rubbing some herbs on his wound. This made him wonder why they couldn't just use a low-level healing technique which would fix it immediately. He also recalls how in BBO, people would use certain skills to create herb-based medicine, but no one seems to be using all of that in this world. So, in other words, him being banished from the house and being left on his own isn't exactly a bad thing for him after all. In this world that is based on broken balance online, it is much better for him to get kicked out from this house of a low-ranked noble so he can just go on and become much stronger. As he is pumped up, Eldo's brother, Rado, shows up. He mentions how tomorrow is going to be Eldo's special day, as he will go through the coming-of-age ceremony. It is at that moment that Eldo informs his brother Rado that he won't be going through the coming-of-age ceremony after all. Rado tells Eldo to not worry about the ceremony, as the cost won't be that much. He mentions how he knows that the family seems to give him the cold shoulder, but it is still their duty to let him undergo the ceremony as is tradition. Eldo tells Rado that it is not about the cost, and that he just doesn't want to undergo the ceremony. The reason why Eldo refuses the coming-of-age ceremony has to do with his time in the game. There are two ways to get a job in BBO. The first is by going through this coming-of-age ceremony, paying a priest and getting their blessing. This is the most straightforward way, but this has a fatal flaw. The job you get won't be the job of your choice, and the job will be very low level. Not only that, but once you get the job, you won't be able to quit it or get another job no matter what happens. So, skipping on this method was considered common sense for most players of BBO. The other way to get a job is by going to the capital city's church. That church is much bigger and has significantly more influence. Going there and getting a blessing would allow a person to get a job of a much higher level with more conveniences. So, he wants to flee from this place and go there to get a job of his choice. Rado isn't quite sure about how their father will perceive this. Eldo tells Rado to just talk to their father on his behalf, because if he were to do it himself, his father would not even pay notice to what Eldo has to say. After much delay, Rado gives in and says that he will be handling their father on Eldo's behalf. Thus, Eldo was set to skip out on the ceremony. The next morning, Eldo is rudely awakened by his father. Eldo thinks about how this is the first time he has talked to his father in over 3 months, and that he barely remembers his name anymore. The father was to the point though, he wanted Eldo to get up and get going. He states how he is fine with Eldo skipping out on the ceremony, as that saves him money. He taunts Eldo, saying this was the first time he had ever contributed to the family, so he shouldn't waste more time and should just leave the house for good. He roos Eldo out of his house and tells his son to never come back again. Eldo thinks about how this was quite the farewell, as no one was there to see him off. He got next to nothing, just some basic clothing without a change, a shabby-looking sword and only 10,000 gils. Gils is the currency of their world, and as Eldo recounts, 10,000 gils would be the equivalent of around $69. Nice. However, waiting for Eldo at the gate was Rado, who was there to see him off. Rado asks Eldo if he is leaving early, to which Eldo says that he doesn't want to waste time, and just head off to the neighboring town, where he can register himself as an adventurer. Rado is pretty taken aback by the fact that he wants to be an adventurer while being a novice. Eldo explains that the status of one's job does not matter in one's quest to become an adventurer. They just need to be decent with the sword. Rado thinks that this is all the more reason why he should get a job. Anyway, Rado offers Eldo 100,000 gils, telling him to keep it for the journey. Eldo is touched by this and thinks that he really has a great brother. That being said, he denies the money, saying his 10,000 gils are enough for him to get by. Rado gets him, but tells him that he is free to come back and take the money in case he ever needs it. Eldo appreciates the sentiment, but also states that he won't ever be needing it. Saying this, Eldo heads off on his own to carve out his own legacy. As he heads out to the forest, Eldo thinks about how he should head to the capital city as soon as possible, which is why he should head to the Adventurers Guild first, as it is a national organization who can probably give him the easiest path to the capital. However, what bothers him is that he has a very stupid sword. The sword is weak, so he doesn't want to come across any dangerous demon. His thoughts bite him back, as the next thing he sees is a demon. The demon gets up and gets ready to pounce as it sees Eldo. Novices aren't good at sensing demons, so naturally, the demons also sense them when they do sense the demons. The demon in front of Eldo was a wolf demon, obviously modeled after a real-life wolf. It is one of the lowest class demons. Eldo draws his sword and thinks about how he can still remember the sensation of swinging a sword in Broken Balance online, so he just needs to channel that. As the demon charges at him, Eldo does just that, and manages to slice up the demon wolf in half. Eldo also manages to land a critical hit on the demon. In BBO, if a player hits a demon perfectly, their XP points for that win is doubled. This is what happened to Eldo in this world, and he was certain about getting a boost thanks to this. Now, Eldo was confident in his skills anyway. In this world that imitated the world of BBO, Eldo felt like he could more than hold his own and do something great. Eldo felt amazed by his own skills. He moved really quickly to respond to that demon and managed to take it out. He realizes that even if he manages to replicate 70% of his abilities from BBO, he will be a force to be reckoned with and will get critical hits with ease. He wonders if it is because he still has the reflexes from BBO down to a T. Well, it does make sense, as the system of this world is the same as BBO. Speaking of BBO, the norm there is to dismantle the demon you take out. By dismantling the demon piece by piece, one can retrieve the necessary items to make shields and other items. Eldo does just that with the wolf. He recalls how this part of the system was heavily criticized by players, as many felt it was an unnecessary addition to the game, and some felt disgusted by it, which is why an automatic dismantling system was introduced. So Eldo goes ahead and chants for that system to take effect, but it didn't. This made him understand that this won't work, so he wondered if the final touch system will work. He chants for the cleaning command, and this ends up working. The demon wolf gets cleaned up as commanded by Eldo. So, Eldo understands that this world is very similar to the game world of Broken Balance Online, but it is not the exact same thing. After some more traveling, Eldo arrives in Ilia town. Once there, Eldo starts exploring the place. Not knowing much about the place, Eldo looked overwhelmed. So, a man from the town came forward and asked Eldo if he got lost. Eldo admits that he is indeed a bit lost, and that it would be great help to him if that man could tell him the directions to the guild. Eldo was very formal in his way of talking. The man observes Eldo's equipments, and deduces that he is a young nobleman who wants to become an adventurer. However, his equipment were very bad, so the guy warns him that if he enters with such equipments, he would immediately get booted out. He says that the people who gave him these must wish really bad for him, which Eldo confirms. Following this, the guy gives Eldo a tip, that being that he should not talk to others so formally. After all, adventurers never use such formal language. Adventurers talk rough because, for example, if a bandit were to overhear a conversation, he would quickly figure out the higher man, or the leader based on the way they talk. So, adventurers tend to use a similar and rougher language so that the hierarchy doesn't become obvious from their talking. So, if Eldo were to talk so formally, the adventurers would make fun of him for not even knowing the basics of becoming a proper adventurer. Eldo quickly readjusts his speaking to be more informal, and asks the guy if this is okay. The guy approves of it, and informs Eldo of the directions to the guild. Eldo starts heading that way, as he realizes that adventurers indeed tend to speak in a very informal way. Even when they're talking to an elite warlord like Eldo's father, they keep their informal tone consistent. As he walks, Eldo eventually reaches the guild and enters the place. It is the Ilia branch of the World Adventurers Guild. Once there, Eldo checks out the various things and finds a world map there. He checks it to see that the capital where he wants to go is located in a different continent than the one he was in. So, he must go through the hardships of going to a different continent for the capital. However, he finds comfort in knowing that the continent is a neighboring one and is pretty close to the continent he was currently in. So, he makes up his mind to eventually go there. However, before that, he wanted to check the notice board to see what requests were being made. One of the requests he saw was a wolf demon slaying request. This was a C rank request. Requests are ranked from F to A in terms of difficulty. So, a wolf slaying request being so high up was shocking for Eldo as the demon wasn't very strong. After all, he, a novice, was able to slay the demon with a solitary strike. So, he assumes that something is wrong. To check if this was some sort of error, Eldo checks the F-ranked requests, as that is where the wolf demon is supposed to be. There, he sees weird demons like the rabbit demon and the rat demon. This was perplexing for Eldo, as he had never seen these demons in Broken Balance Online before. This really makes him question everything, but he decides to stop worrying and just goes to check out if he can sell out the items he has retrieved from the wolf. He goes over to the reception, where he is met by the cute receptionist, Teresa. Eldo asks the cute lady if he can sell the fangs of a demon he had slayed not too long ago. However, he does mention that he can't tell which demon the fangs belong to. The lady finds it quite strange that Eldo can't tell the name of the demon he had finished off, but it does make sense if he is a beginner. Even then, fighting an opponent he has no intel on could have proved to be quite catastrophic. Eldo says that it is, as she mentioned, he is a mere novice, and he doesn't even have a registration from the guild. So, he wonders if this will play a part in him being able to sell the demon fangs here. The lady says it is not an issue, but the price of the fangs will depend on the demand of the demon and its condition. Eldo decides to cut to the chase by just showing her the fangs and letting her judge based on it. He shows the fangs to the lady, and she is left shocked by seeing wolf fangs on Eldo. The lady asks Eldo if he is lying, because that won't get him anywhere. She elaborates on it, saying how many people get these fangs from third-party sources and come to sell here. Many people have bought stuff from other stores to sell it to them, but that is no achievement. Eldo understands that the demon he defeated was indeed the wolf, and that the receptionist lady is thinking that he is lying about slaying it. She basically thinks that he is trying to stat pad, but he doubts that slaying such a weak monster hardly counts as anything. So, Eldo tells her that he just randomly slayed the monster, and that such a weak monster can't really be C-ranked. The lady says that it is a C-ranked demon, and even the official notice board says so. Eldo subsequently says that the one he took out was probably a weaker one. The lady explains that there aren't any huge gaps in strength between demons of the same species. She also adds how the teeth look very clean, which contradicts Eldo's claim of having slayed it recently. Eldo understands that he was being doubted, but he didn't really care, as all he wanted was money. So, he asks the lady if it is possible for him to sell it regardless of the issue. The girl says that it is very much possible, but it won't be counted as an official achievement on Eldo's name. She estimates the value of the fangs to be around 32,000 gils, but because the condition of the teeth was clean, she offers him 34,000 gils. That was more than enough money for Eldo, so he agreed to sell it. Eldo also asks the girl if he can register himself as an adventurer at this guild. The girl tells him that he can do that, but he must take an entrance exam first. The exam's fee would be 5,000 gils, so she counts that and gives Eldo 29,000 gils for the fangs he sold. The lady asks him if he has a job, to which Eldo once again says that he is a novice. Hearing this, she informs him that there will be no refunds even if he fails the exam. Eldo asks if his application will be rejected forever if he fails. The girl replies saying that some guilds do that, but they don't. If one of their applicants fails, they just simply let them choose a different occupation. Eldo mentions how he thought the exams are supposed to be easy. The girl says that the exams are easy, but there is always a choice to change up. The lady then shows him the list of subjects he can choose. She tells him to choose calmly, as he will be treated the same regardless of his subject. She informs him that the subjects are based on the applicant's current skill set. Being a novice though, Eldo won't get to choose a lot of them because he simply doesn't have any skills as a beginner. Eldo realizes that the only real option that he can go for is the option to fight a swordmaster trainer and win that fight. He knows that it'll be very tough, as the skill gap is going to be too much. No matter how much he played BBO, he is still a novice in this world and won't be beating someone who is a master in swordplay. That being said, he will only lose 5,000 gils for trying, so it is worth a shot. He tells the lady that he wants to do the Swordmaster Challenge. The lady accepts his application and tells him that the fight will be held in the training ground. After waiting for a bit, Eldo is taken to the training ground, where he is met by the bigger and more intimidating swordsman. The swordsman is quite hostile too, as he directly asks Eldo if he is the stupid novice who bothered challenging him. After taking just one look, Eldo could say that he was doomed, and asked the guy to go easy on him. The swordmaster told Eldo that he can't go easy on him. After all, if a weak novice like him were to become a swordsman, it could cause him to get hurt fatally. So, he feels a responsibility to stop Eldo from reaching there. His words make Eldo understand that the guy is serious about making Eldo withdraw. He can tell that the guy is way better than him, and that if they were to engage in a sword clash, Eldo will be left done before he can move. However, as he has paid for the money, Eldo wants to go give it a shot. As he gets ready, the swordsman brings out a wooden sword to ensure that Eldo isn't injured fatally. Eldo insists on using a wooden sword too, but the guy tells him it is okay, despite it being a proper blade. The guy is too confident that Eldo won't even get to land a hit. Despite that, Eldo ends up convincing him, and he takes a wooden sword for himself. Eldo took this sword because it feels lighter, and he doesn't want to risk using a real sword. He takes a wooden sword and feels right at home with it. And thus, both of the participants were ready for a big battle. The receptionist lady, Teresa, volunteers to be the referee of the match. She gets ready and calls for the beginning of the test exam. Once the fight starts, Eldo once again thinks about how the class difference is too much between them. He thinks about the only way to beat his opponent is by exploiting their mechanism after a skill move is used. Skill moves are more often than not the most powerful move in a swordsman's repertoire. However, the skill move also comes with a restriction. Once used, the user must recharge themselves for a good 5 to 7 seconds. This will be the opening that Eldo tries to exploit. However, if this guy doesn't end up using any skill moves, Eldo is done for. Just then, the guy charges at Eldo at full speed. Seeing him, Eldo could tell that he was looking for a downward strike. Eldo wasn't confident about surviving the strike, but he knew that taking a back step would help him avoid the attack. The swordmaster jumps up and proceeds to perform the guard crash special skill. Eldo recognizes this as the skill that is used to produce brute strength to break through any defense. Alert, Eldo steps out of the way, leaving the swordmaster wide open. Eldo is happy about pulling this off and subsequently swings his sword to get a hit in and win the bout. The attack sends the swordmaster flying back. The referee calls for a stop to the fight, declaring Eldo the winner. Eldo is surprised to get the victory, but is glad nonetheless, as he thinks that the swordmaster went easy on him. However, the swordmaster was stunned by the fact that he lost to a novice, who can't even use a special skill. Eldo thinks of the guy as a nice person as he thought he was pretending to be shocked. So, Eldo goes forward and thanks the guy before offering him a hand to get back up. After a while, Eldo asks the swordmaster if he has passed the entrance exam with the performance. The master, even though he hated to admit it, says that it was indeed Eldo's victory. Eldo is pleased to know that. The master then asks Eldo about his training and how he learnt to use this sword technique. Eldo tells him that his sword technique is self-taught. He chose to lie because if he had told them that he learned from a game, people would just not believe him. Hence the lie. The sword master found it amusing, and the fact that Eldo actually defeated him is very impressive. Eldo says it is nothing special, as he only managed to win because the swordmaster went easy on him. The swordmaster doesn't get it, as Eldo brings up the fact that he used the ground crusher ability. However, the guy has no clue about Eldo's talk, as Eldo assumes that the swordmaster is just playing dumb to make it seem like he didn't go easy on him. Following this, the receptionist lady congratulates Eldo for completing the entrance exam. She welcomes him to the guild and gives him an official card as a member of the guild. Eldo sees that it has his name on it, and it states his rank, which is F. The lady then offers to tell Eldo about the 3 obligations of an adventurer. Eldo tells her to inform him about it, and so she does. The 3 obligations of an adventurer are to never provide false information to the guild, never divulge information from the client, and to always follow the rules and regulations of the country one is working in. Eldo asks for what the repercussions will be if he breaks one of these rules. Teresa says that the punishment can span from being suspended for a while to being outright banned. It all depends on the severity of the misconduct and the law of the country. In case of a crime, even capital punishment can be dished out. Eldo thinks that the rules are a bit too harsh, but also remembers that there was one extra obligation in BBO. He asks her if there is any rule that makes it obligatory for them to offer their services for an emergency. He thinks this is a key thing, as having to do emergency duty can prove to be a drag. However, Teresa tells him that they only care about the 3 obligations, and that no emergency service will be forced upon anyone. Following this, Teresa tells him of some other things like deadlines and penalties. Each request needs to be completed within a deadline. If certain deadlines aren't met, the adventurer will need to pay a penalty. The amount of the penalty depends on the level of urgency included in the request. Eldo asks her what will happen if he manages to complete a request, but fails to report within the deadline. Teresa makes it clear that the guild will adjust their own deadline based on location and conditions, but if one fails to report it within that deadline, it will be considered an incomplete request. Eldo gets some much-needed knowledge from this. Following this, he asks Teresa if she has any guide for the demons and the fighting. Teresa tells him that there are some, but he cannot take them outside unless he buys them or copies it by hand. So, Teresa brings him the 2 basic books. Eldo first checks out the monster guide, where the F, E, and D rank demons are the ones he has no knowledge of. Rank C has demons such as the wolf, the vampire bat, and a few more. These are generally considered to be the lowest ranked in BBO, so having them so high here makes no sense for him. He also finds out that rage wolves, which are considered a step above beginner level in BBO, are B ranked in this world. This makes him wonder if everyone in this world is A ranked. He then goes to check the A ranked section and finds it empty. This pleases Eldo, as it means that the area has no A ranked demons. Eldo then checks out the fighting manual. The first 3 levels of basic, beginner, and intermediate all talk about rookie movements and fighting singular opponents, whereas the advanced level only talks about fighting multiple opponents, which shocks Eldo as these are beginner level stuff. He then finds a bit of information about the miracle strike, which is a rare phenomenon where the swordsman's strikes are amplified. The strongest person in the universe only has a 20% success rate for miracle strike. Eldo understands that this miracle strike is supposed to be a critical hit, which he landed earlier on the wolf demon. However, the fact that the strongest guy in the universe only managed to get a 20% crit rate means that they are only slightly above beginner level. He realizes that the people of this universe have no idea on how to land critical hits. It is quite simple, one simply needs to relax their hand before the landing of the hit. This is when it occurs to him that this world has no idea on how to use skills and other basic things. After taking everything into consideration, Eldo understands that he cannot be taking stuff written on these guides at face value. So, he decides to take it out of his system. Teresa asks Eldo if the book was helpful, and to keep her happy, he tells her that it indeed was quite helpful. Following this, Eldo asks Teresa how he can reach the capital of the continent. Teresa says that he can go there, but he first needs to go to the neighboring city of Minatan, from where he can take the ship to the capital. That being said, the seats are quite expensive for the average person. Eldo gets confused hearing that, so Teresa explains that the ships are usually reserved for high-ranked guild members or government staff. There is a small section of seats for commoners, but they are ridiculously expensive at over 3 million gils. Eldo asks Teresa if there is any alternative way for him to get there. Teresa states that he can get there by becoming a government staff, or becoming related to the royal family in any way, or join a high-ranked guild and take a big mission. These are the other options he can explore. Knowing how unrealistic the matter is, he decides to just save up 3 million gils instead. Following this, Eldo decides to ask Teresa for a request, which would allow him to earn a lot of money. However, he makes it clear that he does not want to jump the gun to something hard. Teresa suggests him an E-rank mission, where he must take out several demons, and will get paid per extermination. Eldo asks if it is okay for him, an F-ranker, to take an E-ranked mission. Teresa tells him that it will be fine, as there is no specified rank requirement for the mission. That being said, the mission was indeed paying a lot more than most missions of this class. Teresa says that this is because this particular mission is quite hard, and that it is essentially a D-ranked mission. Eldo turns it down, saying he does not want to do something so hard so early. Teresa tells him that it should be fine, as he did beat a sword master. However, Eldo denies credit in that, as he thinks it was a matter of luck, where the sword master went easy on him and he managed to get in a miracle strike. Teresa says that the sword master didn't go easy on him at all, and that these tests are made so that the unworthy person fails. She then asks him if he mentioned a miracle strike, because if he did land that even by chance, he is already an expert. This shocks Eldo, as he does know that it requires skills to start landing critical hits, But even then, landing a few critical hits shouldn't be that hard. Meanwhile, Teresa brings up a C-ranked mission, citing Eldo's expertise to be enough to get through this. However, Eldo does not want to do it at all. He feels like he will get finished off if he listened to Teresa and started looking for himself. This is when Teresa finally gives in and decides to give him a much easier task. She tells him to go to Ilya's second forest, where there are only kick rabbits, so it should be easy. However, he tells him to stay alerted at all times. Eldo takes on the offer, as they were offering 1,500 gills per extermination. So Eldo goes out to take on the mission. On his way out, Eldo meets the swordmaster he had defeated earlier. The swordmaster calls out to him, asking if the strongest novice is going out on a mission. Eldo states that he is not the strongest and that he is indeed heading for a mission. He mentions that he will be hunting down kick rabbits at the Ilya's second forest. The swordmaster is a bit taken aback by this, while Eldo explained that Teresa gave him this mission because he asked for an easier one, and she wanted him to do something harder. After hearing this, the swordmaster wishes Eldo good luck as he heads out for the forest. Once at Ilya's second forest, Eldo prepares himself as he notes how kick rabbits are quite strong and can be a tough challenge for novices. As he goes inside the forest, he starts analyzing the place around him. He goes deeper inside the forest when he suddenly hears the sound of something moving. Eldo assumes this must be a kick rabbit making their way to him, but the sound definitely indicated that something bigger was coming his way. The next thing he knows, the demon coming at him actually turned out to be a lesser wolf. Eldo was absolutely irate because of this. After all, Teresa, the receptionist, basically fooled him into taking the much harder and dangerous mission of taking out lesser wolves, just as she had suggested at first. However, Eldo knew that this wasn't the time to sulk, and that he needed to fight them. As the horde of wolves gets ready to charge at him, Eldo decides to engage them head-on. However, this turned out to be a ploy by Eldo, as he moved at the final second to avoid the wolves coming at him. He then took advantage of the situation and slashed down the first wolf. He didn't waste much time before taking out another. Eldo notes that the first rule of engaging multiple opponents at once is to force them into as many one-on-one situations as possible. The move he made allowed him to do that, and now the wolves had lost their formation. This was Eldo's chance to strike and not let them regroup. And that he does perfectly. He takes out a few more wolves, until he takes time and lands a perfect blow to take out the last wolf. Right after he takes out the final wolf, a light glows around Eldo, and he feels like his body has just gotten lighter. He wonders if he has leveled up like in BBO, but he wasn't sure if the world had a level up system. So, to check things out, Eldo picks up a rock and uses the special reinforced rock throw technique. The technique works, and he breaks a hole through a tree with his throw. Eldo understands that he has leveled up, as this trick can only be used by level 2 players, and he wasn't able to do it previously. So, all in all, he thought it was quite a nice first day for him. After all, he registered himself on the guild and leveled up as well. That being said, he wanted to go back and give Teresa a piece of his mind for messing with the mission she gave him. Later, Eldo goes over to the guild and shows the carcass of the lesser wolf, asking Teresa if that looked like a kick rabbit. Teresa decides to play dumb to avoid blame, asking how he had taken out a lesser wolf in the kick rabbit forest. Eldo sees through her and asks her what she meant, to which Teresa says that she had actually told him to go to the kick rabbit forest, lying through her teeth. However, it seems like Eldo must have gone to the Ilya's second forest by mistake. Eldo plays along and says that he must have messed up, so his mission has probably been deemed a failure. This is when Teresa says that she had coincidentally signed him up for the Lesser Wolves mission by mistake, so he can actually take the prize for that. Eldo informs her that he had slain 6 lesser wolves, and Teresa says that each wolf slain has been rewarded with 20,000 gills. So it means that Eldo has 120,000 gills now. Eldo is bamboozled by such a large sum, and he thinks about how he would have only gotten 9,000 gills if he had taken the kick rabbit mission. So, he thanks Teresa in his mind, as he assumes that she must have picked this job for him, judging off his ability and made him maximize his gains. Following this, Eldo asks her if there will be more lesser wolves slaying mission tomorrow, to which she says yes. The next day, Eldo first goes to the sword shop to pick a sword that is suitable for his build. He wanted to get a sword that would make up for his lack of physical stats in this world. He checked quite a few swords there, but none of them were to his taste. So, he asks the shop owner if there is something better for him. The shop owner shows him a special sword, but mentions that it is quite expensive. Eldo is impressed by the looks of it and wants to give it a try. After a trial run, Eldo is convinced that the sword is good enough for him and that it won't break during battle. So, he ends up buying the short-hand sword. After buying it though, Eldo was totally broke, so he knew that he needed to make back the money. So, he goes to the guild to meet up with Teresa and asks if there are more Lesser Wolves mission. Teresa tells him there is, and that he can take out 32 more wolves in this mission. Eldo is confused by this, so he asks for an explanation. Teresa explains that such missions usually have a limit set for how many demons they want exterminated, and if you take out more than their requirement, you won't be compensated for it. Eldo understands that he needs to work the limit and ends up taking that mission. However, he also wanted to take another mission before leaving. Teresa lets him know that he has to take out over 30 wolves, so his hands are not empty. Eldo tells her that it will take only 2 hours to wipe out the wolves, shocking her. So he wanted another mission. He checks and finds an E-rank mission, asking for the extermination of drill demon mouses in their forest. The limit for that was 546 and the pay was 4,000 gills per mouse. Eldo was interested and Teresa told him that the mission was quite good and that it is on his level, so he should go. Following this, Eldo first heads to the second Ilias forest, where he takes out the remaining 32 wolves, before deciding to move on to the drill mouses. He gets to their den, and he does not like the smoggy vibe there. It was quite different to how Teresa had described the place. Sometime later, he finds a drill mouse. He decides to fight it when the mouse calls out for more of its friends. A bunch of drill mouses arrive, as Eldo fails to count the exact number. He decides to give the mouses no time and takes out one of them right away. But as more of them charge at him, he understands that despite the new sword and skills, his stats won't allow him to beat these many mouses, and he is at a clear disadvantage. He comes to terms that he must also take blows here. So, the fight begins and Eldo starts slaying the mouses one by one. But the mouses weren't easy either. They used their drills and started piercing through the skin of Eldo, hurting him. Despite this, Eldo felt like the pain was bearable and fought on. He keeps attacking the mouses while simultaneously using the self-cure magic to heal him, as a novice like him can't afford to tank blows. After a lot of effort, he manages to slay the mouses and go back to the guild. He amasses a ridiculous 276 slays, shocking Teresa. However, Eldo did secretly resent her for playing dumb again. She told him the mission was fine for him despite it being quite dangerous for someone on his level and with his style. Following this, Eldo informs Teresa that the spear mouses had gathered together to attack him in numbers. This confuses Eldo, as the spear mouses don't do that. They do gather in numbers, but don't usually gather in hundreds. This is when she checks and finds out from the leftover body parts that these belong to the army spear mouses. Eldo asks if the army spear mouses are different monsters from regular spear mouses. Teresa confirms that they indeed are, and that the army spear mouses are much more dangerous. If normal spear mouses are about E rank, then the army spear mouses are like C-ranked monsters. They are some of the toughest monsters to beat, and going up against them can be life-threatening. Eldo was more concerned about whether or not this counts as a failed mission, which Teresa confirms to be the case. Eldo, like before, asks Teresa if there is any way for her to transfer his mission to Army Spear Mouse Extermination, but Teresa states that it is not possible. However, she does mention that the Army Spear Mouses have rare parts, which can be sold for a fortune. She counts that per body part, he can be paid about 20,000 gills. Eldo gets excited hearing this, and tells Teresa to quickly sell off the gathered body parts. Teresa does that, and gives Eldo a pouch full of gills for his work. The pouch also included platinum coins, which by themselves can be worth at over 1,000,000 gills. Eldo is happy to learn that, but Teresa tells him to be wary and not show it off, as that might alert thieves to target him. Eldo is shocked to know that thieves are around, but Teresa explains that the place is rather safe, but people should always be cautious. Following this, Teresa lets Eldo know that he can now go to the capital with the money he has. Eldo says that he is aware of that, and he is planning on leaving as soon as possible. Teresa says it is a shame that Eldo will be leaving so soon, as the town had not seen someone as talented as him in ages. Eldo tells her that he will be back when he feels like coming back. Teresa then asks Eldo what is his reason for going to the capital. He states to have personal reasons to go there, and the main goal is to do something that will make him a better adventurer. So Eldo prepares to leave when Teresa calls out to him. She bows down and apologizes to him. She admits that she had lied to him about the Kick Rabbit mission. Eldo asks if that is all she had to say. He then reassures her that it is fine, and that it turned out to be a blessing in disguise if anything. However, he does tell her to not do this to someone else, as they might get in trouble because of it. Teresa agrees and they part ways in smiling terms. Following this, Eldo even waves goodbye to the swordsman he had beaten. Eventually, he arrives in the port town of Minatan. There, he asks a guard where he could get tickets to the ship that goes to the capital. The guard tells him to go to the Manga commercial firm, but does warn him that the tickets do cost a fortune. Eldo does shock him by telling him that he does know that it costs 3 million gills, and that he will be still going. He then thanks the guy and waves him goodbye, heading off to the Manga commercial firm. Once at the Manga commercial firm, Eldo realizes just how big the place is. He enters there and goes to the ferry ticket counter to book a ticket to the capital city. He asks the man on the counter for a ticket, and the guy in turn asks him if he has a special recommendation letter. Eldo says that is not the case, and that he is here to buy a ticket. The guy tells him that the tickets are quite expensive, so Eldo shows him 3 platinum coins and asks him if this much is enough for the ticket. The ticket guy says that it is indeed enough. He then asks Eldo if he is a popular adventurer, to which Eldo says that he is not, and that he is in fact a novice adventurer with no popularity. The ticket guy thinks Eldo was joking and asks him when he wants to depart. Eldo says that he wants to leave as quickly as possible. So, the guy tells him to take the ship that will depart for the capital in about 30 minutes. Eldo does that and he gets on the ship to go to the capital. As the ship sails, Eldo looks around to see everything. There, he discovers that the ship was using a relic called the water traveling stone to move. He also sees a couple of ladies trying to make a potion but failing at it. He asks if it is the pale green spirit potions. The girls are taken aback by it and asks Eldo what he had said. He told them that he saw them brewing and wondered if they were making the pale green spirit potion. This makes the 2 girls curious, as they ask him if he knows how to make potions. Eldo admits that he does, so the girl asks him if he can make the potion for her. In exchange, Shay's willing to pay any price he wants. Eldo takes up the offer, but wonders how much he should ask for, and if that will be considered overpaying. He ends up asking for 10 million gills, and the girl thinks that is next to no money. Shocked, Eldo prepares the potion for her, and the girl accepts it. This makes Eldo wonder just who she is, because she was paying an incredible amount of money to him. The girl paid him the 10 million gills in platinum coins and added some more as bonus. She also gives him a special card, telling him to keep it. The card was a card of approval from the Manga commercial firm. If he uses that card, he can go to any firm and be signed as a trustworthy person to them. It is basically a sign of trust for him. Eldo wonders if the girl doing so much is okay. She tells him that she is grateful towards him for making the potion for her. She says that doing this much is not a lot for the company president. This confuses Eldo, so the girl introduces himself as the president of the Manga commercial firm, Mini Manga. They are the ones who govern this ship they were on. Eldo, surprised, says that he did not expect to get the trust of the president of the company on this ship, and mentioned that he was really grateful. Mini Manga then asks Eldo for his name, to which he promptly introduces himself. Following this, Mini Manga tells Eldo to have a good trip, and says that they will be meeting later. However, before she left, Eldo asks Mini to wait and see what was coming towards them from the other side. Eldo tells her that while he knows that the ship is built in a way to withstand monster attacks, he still wants her to check it. Mini orders one of her men to check with a binocular. The guy does so, and is horrified to discover a sea dragon monster coming right at them. This causes panic, as a sea dragon is a very powerful monster. Eldo asks Minnie if the ship would be able to withstand an attack from the monster, to which she says no. Instead, she orders everyone who can fight in the ship to gather, and everyone else to take refuge. Eldo states that the sea dragon is probably after the mast of the ship, as the mast contains the water-traveling stone. However, they cannot let the sea dragon take it, as it will cause the ship to drown. So, he asks everyone present if there is anyone there who can launch long-range attacks. A few people raise their hands, 3 mages and 2 archers to be exact. Next, Eldo asks them if there is anyone who will be able to defend them from the sea dragon's attack. As expected, no one is capable of defending the ship. Mini Masha thinks this is only normal, as the sea dragon is an A-ranked monster. Without any choice left, Eldo steps up to be the one defending the mast of the ship. He gets up and sees that the sea dragon was in range for attack, so he tells the mages and archer to launch the attack. They attack the sea dragon at once with their arrows and alchemy, and the attack lands. The attackers are left disappointed by the result though, as they think the attack had done no real damage. But Eldo tells them to pay attention, as the attack had indeed dealt some damage to the monster. He tells them to continue as Eldo thinks about how he had never doubted the attacking part. What he feels concerned about is the defensive part. This is when the sea dragon dives down deep to avoid the oncoming attacks. The dragon then rises up before the ship, getting ready to attack the mast with its javelin-like arms. This was indeed a tough predicament for Eldo, but he decides to combat it by matching the dragon's attack with a critical hit of his own. He does just that and pulls off a proper critical counter, managing to deflect the dragon's attack. This shocks everyone, as they could not believe how good Eldo is. Meanwhile, Eldo felt that they were wasting time being shocked, while he was putting his life on the line. So, Mini Masha orders the attackers to once again attack the sea dragon, which they do. The attack bamboozles the sea dragon, but it still musters up strength to attack the ship again. Eldo got ready to defend with the same tactic again, but this time the dragon was attacking with both arms. Eldo knew that this was dangerous, as defending against 2 javelin arms was nigh impossible. Eldo still defends one arm, but luck favors him, and the second arm misses the mast by a little bit. This is when Eldo realizes that he does not need to do it forever, and he just needs to make sure that mast doesn't break before the sea dragon is defeated. And the defeat of the sea dragon was quite near. The attackers kept attacking, and this made the dragon lose its footing. Disbalanced, the dragon was ready to attack the ship again, but this time, it lost the plot and was going to attack Mini Masha. Just when the sea dragon was going to take her out, Eldo steps in and manages to save her life with his sword. The deflection sends the dragon away, and the final few attacks from the wages and archer takes the dragon out. This was a moment of triumph for everyone, as they had defeated the sea dragon. The ship captain thanked the warriors who took the dragon out. He also wanted to thank the skillful and mysterious adventurer, but Eldo had seemingly disappeared. Turns out, he had escaped to a nearby room with Mini Masha. He tells Minnie that he wants to go to the capital for work, so he wanted to avoid the attention from nobles and influential people. Minnie laughs, as he was basically avoiding people like her. However, Minnie does tell him that he has saved the lives of many people, including her own. So, she swears upon the name of Masha to repay him swiftly.
Eldo smiles back at her, saying he'll look forward to it. From the shore, a black-robed figure watches the ship that just survived a sea dragon attack. Another figure beside him says he can't believe the monster lost. But the second one shrugs it off, saying this defeat doesn't matter. It's just a minor setback for the Garden of Despair. Back on deck, Eldo looks out at the sea as a voice announces that the ship is about to reach the capital and everyone should get ready to disembark. He turns toward the horizon. The capital is massive and luxurious, towering in the distance. Eldo thinks to himself, soon, he'll finally become a sage. As the ship closes in on the capital, Eldo starts scanning the area for the cathedral. Eventually, he spots it. Perched on a cliff, old and worn down, it looks more like ruins than a sacred place. Looking closer, he sees a carving above the door, a portrait of Giaz, the god of jobs. Eldo figures it's enough. Even if the place is falling apart, this is still the capital's job-changed cathedral. As long as it exists, he can switch his class. That's all that matters. Mina, still aboard the ship, asks if he's planning to go to church. She didn't peg him as religious. Then she says she knows someone there and can help if he needs it. Eldo thinks it's a solid offer. Class changing through the cathedral isn't exactly common knowledge, and in the worst case, he might have to break in. Eldo decides to take Mina up on her offer. He asks for help, glancing back at the ruined cathedral. Mina catches his look and explains that the place is inactive. It's an old church, used long ago but abandoned for years. Now it's just a pile of ruins. She points somewhere else, saying the real cathedral is in a different location now. Eldo turns to look and sees it, a massive temple, way bigger than the rundown one. He's surprised this is the current capital cathedral. But something feels off. There's no carving of jiaos anywhere on the new building. That alone makes Eldo doubt if you can even change classes there. He asks Mina if he can enter the ruins without permission. Mina says she thought he was actually religious, but since he's just curious, it's fine. He can go in. Still, she warns him. The ruins are dangerous. Thugs and bandits often hide out in places like that. Even then, she's confident Eldo can handle it. He says he'd rather not press his luck. After all, he's only F rank. Mina is caught off guard. She stares at him, thinking he's joking. But Eldo pulls out his adventurer's card to prove it. Now Mina's straight up shocked. She says the guild that gave him this rank must be blind. She even threatens to contact them and demand a promotion for him. Eldo quickly asks her not to. He doesn't want to be handed the highest rank without earning it. Mina still doesn't believe he's inexperienced, but agrees not to interfere if that's what he wants. Eldo then remembers something he figured out recently. The abilities of heroes in this world perfectly match the mechanics from Broken Balance Online. His last battle confirmed it. Compared to that game, the people in this world are helpless in combat. Most attacks only work if they accidentally activate a skill and land a hit on a standing target. Eldo knows skills alone aren't enough. Strength matters too. He tells himself that even if the sea dragon just stood still in front of the ship for 10 straight hours, he still wouldn't have been able to take it down. That's why he refuses to accept a top rank right away. He knows he doesn't deserve it yet. He thanks Mina for all the help and the info about the cathedrals. Says he'll try getting into the old temple. Mina tells him to be careful and to contact her if anything goes wrong. Eldo thanks her again and says goodbye. From here, they go their separate ways. Now alone, Eldo starts exploring the capital. The city's packed. Everyone's busy, moving with purpose. It feels alive. Definitely worthy of being called the capital. The crowd's bigger, the streets are busier, and there's a constant buzz around him. Eventually, Eldo checks into one of the local hotels. Sitting on the bed, he thinks about how badly he wants to change classes. But if the ruins are crawling with bandits, heading in during the day isn't a good idea. He figures 3 a.m. is the perfect time. People won't be thinking straight, and it'll be easier to slip in unnoticed. For now, he decides to rest until then. But suddenly his stomach growls. He realizes he hasn't eaten since boarding the ship. It's been hours, so he heads out again, looking for something to eat. While walking through the city, he passes 2 men having a conversation. They're talking about someone named Igiras. Eldo finally reaches the tavern. The place looks shady, but it's open, so he goes in. The waitress welcomes him, and he walks deeper inside. He asks if it's okay to sit alone, but she tells him the tavern's full, so he'll need to share a table. He sits down across from a blonde girl. She's eating something that looks pretty good, so without thinking much, Eldo orders the same, hamburger and chips. When the food arrives, he takes a bite and admits it's really good. Suddenly, a man bursts into the tavern. He's loud, angry, and wearing a black eye patch over his right eye. He yells at the waitress, demanding to know why she didn't reserve the best seats for his crew. He waves a map around and asks if she's blind. The waitress apologizes and explains that the tavern doesn't take reservations. He'll have to wait for a table like everyone else. But the man keeps yelling that there are no free seats. She tells him again to wait. He grins. Says he gets it now. If there are no open seats, he'll just free one up himself. He pushes past the girl and walks straight over to Eldo's table. Then he turns to the blonde girl and tells her to get lost. The girl looks terrified. Watching this unfold, Eldo starts to get irritated. He mutters that it's starting to piss him off. The man stops. He turns his attention to Eldo, voice cold and commanding, and tells him to say that again. Eldo asks why the man thinks he can just barge in and expect others to give up their seats. He tells him to wait like everyone else. The man gets even angrier and demands Eldo leave the tavern. Eldo can tell there's no point reasoning with him. He stays calm and says the guy should wait for his friends to arrive. He also adds that he'll be done eating by then anyway. Eldo takes another bite of his burger and says it actually tastes really good. The man loses it and yells at Eldo to stop acting smug. He suddenly draws his sword right in front of Eldo's face. The whole tavern falls silent. Everyone is nervous, but Eldo doesn't even flinch. He watches the man's stance and quickly realizes how sloppy it is. The guy clearly has no idea what he's doing. As the man swings his sword down, Eldo picks up his fork and deflects the blow, then counters with a clean strike. Everyone is stunned. The man can't believe his sword was blocked with a fork. Eldo grabs his arm and locks it, slamming him against the wall. He explains that he's using a strength-enhancing skill and can break his arm easily. The man panics and yells that Eldo won't get away with this, but Eldo says that waving a sword in a tavern is already asking for trouble, and this is the least he deserves. The man gets even more irritated when Eldo calls him an idiot. Eldo starts to wonder if this guy is some kind of famous adventurer. The man clenches his fists and shouts that Eldo better listen. He says he has a bronze card from the Zanies company and swears he'll make Eldo's life a nightmare. Eldo, not knowing what that even means, asks what a bronze card is. A man nearby explains that the bronze card is given to adventurers by the Zanies company as a sign of respect and recognition. It's considered a badge of honor. Eldo takes out the card Mina gave him and compares it to the guy's card. The man shouts that the Zanies company will get revenge, but Eldo calmly pulls out his own card and shows it to him. The moment the man sees it, his expression changes completely. He drops to the floor in shock. It's a gold card from the Mashia company. The entire tavern goes silent. Then the murmurs start. One of the knights steps forward and says he never expected someone in this place to be carrying a card like that. Eldo is confused by the reaction and starts realizing how much power this card holds. The man drops to his knees and begs for forgiveness. He even offers everything he owns, but Eldo refuses. He says he doesn't need anything from him. Everyone in the tavern stares, shocked. Some whisper that they've never even heard of someone like Eldo, while others feel bad for the guy who messed with him. People begin talking about the card, agreeing that Eldo clearly isn't just some random traveler. Eldo decides to put the card away for now. It's already attracting too much attention. Just then, a group of guards rushes into the tavern, demanding to know what's going on. Eldo's surprised anyone even called them. The man with the eye patch crawls over and begs them to arrest him, admitting he started the fight. The guards are confused but agree and take him away. Eldo decides it's best not to attract any more attention and quietly heads out. But as he leaves the tavern, the girl who was sitting with him runs up and sincerely thanks him. Eldo just tells her to be careful and avoid trouble, though in his head, he admits he was only looking out for himself. Back at the hotel, Eldo finds out that not only was his lunch free, but he also got a coupon for another free meal. Holding the coupon, he returns to his room, planning to rest until it's time to move. But even after lying down, he can't sleep. He's still buzzing from the earlier fight. At least his body got some rest. That's enough for now. Late at night, Eldo walks through the city. The streets are quiet, everyone asleep. He activates his night vision skill, and the whole city lights up like it's daytime. It's a basic skill that any class can learn, but Eldo hopes most people don't know about it. It's way too useful. Eventually, he reaches the ruins of the old cathedral. As he gets closer, he notices movement inside. Someone's still awake. Eldo figures these might be the people living in the ruins and decides to stay cautious. He's not looking to start a fight. He remembers how, in his old game, most churches had hidden areas underground. That's where class changes usually happened. If the same logic applies here, there must be a secret room under this cathedral too. Following the sound of voices, Eldo heads downstairs and peeks through a crack in a basement door. Inside, he spots a bunch of bandits drinking. The lock on the door is loose, but busting in directly isn't a great idea. Eldo steps back and quietly returns outside. Eldo heads toward the old well near the cathedral. In churches like this, wells were often secret entrances to underground areas. And he's right. After climbing down, he finds a hidden door at the bottom, but going through the door directly is risky. He'd be an easy target. So Eldo pulls out his sword, smashes the lock off the door, and immediately runs to a safer spot. The sudden noise sends the men inside into a panic, but no one spots him. Knowing he doesn't have time for a quiet descent, Eldo jumps straight into the well. He activates soft landing midair and lands without a sound. While the guards are still searching upstairs, he slips through the now unlocked door. Inside is a storage room. White sacks stacked along the walls catch his attention. One glance, and he freezes. These aren't just supplies. They're illegal substances. The same kind that cause serious problems in the game world. Eldo remembers the group responsible for spreading them. He considers burning everything, but decides to keep moving for now. He pushes through another door and runs straight into one of the ruins' guards. The man instantly yells that he's found the intruder and calls for backup. Eldo quickly backs off. The guards are confused about how he got in, but they don't waste time. Orders are simple. Kill on sight. Eldo takes off, dodging arrows flying past him from all sides. While running, he knows he has no choice left. He needs to change class, and he needs to do it now. Suddenly, Eldo spots it, a door with a carving of the god of jobs. Without hesitation, he rushes in and finds a human-sized statue of the god inside. This is it. He can change class here. Eldo blocks the entrance with a bookcase and turns toward the statue. He knows how it works. Either receive a priest's blessing, or recite the incantation of the class you want. He focuses. He's not after any regular class, he wants to become a sage. A master of all forms of magic. A class so powerful it broke the balance in the game. The orb in the statue's hand starts glowing. Magic swirls around him. His clothes shift, and a scarf wraps around his neck. The transformation is complete. Eldo has become a sage. He stares at his hands, trying to make sense of the sensation. In the game, class changes were instant. But this feels different. Real. Before he can process it fully, the sound of approaching footsteps snaps him back. No time to waste. He presses one hand against the wall. Magic circles form around his palm. He casts Fireball. A massive explosion rips through the wall, blasting open an escape route. The men outside are still trying to break in, unaware Eldo's already near the well. He activates flight and soars into the sky. From above, he watches the chaos below. They're still searching, but he's already out. He flies away from the cathedral, then descends to the ground to rest. But before he can even catch his breath, someone throws a dagger straight at him. Eldo dodges the dagger and spins around, alarmed. The man in front of him seems mildly impressed by his reflexes. He's dressed in a black robe, the same kind worn by the people who had watched the ship after the dragon attack. The man steps closer and tells Eldo he's good at planning and using his skills. But everything about him feels off. Eldo notices a strange crest stitched into the man's robe. It's from the Garden of Despair. That name instantly rings a bell. In Broken Balance Online, the Garden of Despair was one of the most dangerous organizations in the game. They operated in secret and aimed to destabilize society. Their goals were vague, but their actions were violent. The man is surprised Eldo even knows who they are. Eldo casually says he's aware they were the ones behind the dragon attack on the ship. That catches the man off guard. Even within the society, that information wasn't widely known. Eldo had only guessed, but it turns out he was right. The man says he heard rumors about an adventurer with a weak sword who managed to survive the dragon's attacks. He asks if that was Eldo. Eldo, annoyed at the insult, says the sword cost him 150,000 gil. Weak or not, it wasn't cheap. When Eldo asks what the man would do if he was the one from the rumors, the man calmly makes an offer. He invites Eldo to join the Garden of Despair. Eldo is caught off guard. The man says he can personally vouch for him. He's not just a member, he belongs to a unit called the Process Supremacy. He tells Eldo he can offer him anything he wants. Eldo hesitates. He doesn't know what to do. The offer sounds like a trap, but part of him feels like maybe he should accept it just to stay alive. He reminds himself he's only a level 5 sage right now. Not strong enough to deal with someone this dangerous. But still, he's curious about what this group is after. Even so, Eldo shakes his head and says he's not interested in joining. The man doesn't seem bothered. He says Eldo doesn't have to commit, just try it out for a week. Then he starts going on about how much money he could make, how many people he could kill without consequence. He says once Eldo gets a taste for blood, he'll never want to stop. Then without warning, he lunges at him. Eldo narrowly dodges the strike. The dagger slices right past his head. Eldo says he's never killed anyone, but maybe it's time to start. And this guy might just be the first. Eldo draws his sword and charges. The man responds by throwing a volley of daggers. Eldo deflects all of them with his blade. He closes the gap fast and swings hard, aiming for a clean hit. But the man blocks the sword with nothing but a dagger. Eldo is stunned. He can't believe his full-strength strike got deflected that easily. The man snarls again, mocking his weapon. He draws another dagger and goes for a counterattack. Eldo dodges it just in time. As they clash again, Eldo realizes something important. This guy is using only one hand, and he's still winning. He's clearly stronger. The man laughs as if this is a game, telling Eldo his death is only a matter of time. Eldo doesn't back down. He activates his clay bullet skill and fires at point blank. The man leaps out of the way, dodging the blast with ease. As he lands, he mocks Eldo again, saying he thought the kid was using a lightweight sword, but turns out he's just a wizard. Eldo grips his blade tighter and says they'll find out soon enough. Then he rushes in. A short fight breaks out. The man charges, but Eldo dodges and counters. The man avoids the strike and jumps back. Eldo casts a spell aimed at the legs. The man laughs and calls it a petty move. But suddenly he can't move. His foot is stuck. Then his whole body gets tangled in glowing restraints. He can't understand what's happening or why he can't break free. Eldo watches and confirms that the sticky bomb worked. It's a trap spell that covers the target in adhesive. It looks just like the clay projectiles he used earlier, which makes it hard to tell them apart in the dark. His plan worked, first the fake out, then the real trap. The man struggles, but the more he moves, the worse it gets. The glue splashes and spreads even more. Eldo walks up and casts Firebomb. He says it's a shame he couldn't let himself die and smiles. The man explodes in flames and collapses, burned to ash. But then, Eldo sees him take out a capsule and bite down on it. In an instant, the fire stops hurting him. His wounds vanish. His body starts changing. One arm bulks up, claws stretch out, and his whole body mutates. Eldo is stunned. The man has turned into a monster. He slams his arm down on the bridge with full force. The impact shatters part of the bridge, leaving a huge hole. The man no longer looks human. Eldo is already in the sky, dodging the monster's attack. From the way it looks, he immediately understands that the man took an artificial demon pill. In Broken Balance Online, this kind of drug was used by the highest members of the Garden of Despair. It strips away a person's sanity and permanently changes their form, but in return, it gives them overwhelming strength. Realizing this, Eldo starts to suspect that the Garden of Despair in this world isn't just inspired by the one in the game. It's actually the same organization, connected by more than just name and symbol. He knows this enemy is going to be trouble, so he decides not to hold back. He apologizes and says he has no choice but to defeat him. Eldo fires a single flame arrow, and although the monster catches it with his hand, it explodes on impact and causes serious damage. Right after that, Eldo follows up with 5 more flame arrows, launched all at once. Each one explodes as soon as it hits, covering the monster in a series of massive fire blasts. Thick smoke rises, and the stone bridge is left covered in black soot. Eldo watches carefully, then confirms the target is no longer moving. He turns away and leaves the area before anyone notices what happened. By morning, Eldo is still in his room, holding his sword. He hasn't slept. After what happened last night, he kept expecting another attack and stayed alert the entire time. At least now, the enemies that were openly chasing him are gone. But he knows that danger might still be around the corner. The Garden of Despair isn't finished yet. He stands up, gets ready, and heads out into the city once more. Eldo thinks to himself that a sage really needs a proper staff. He can cast spells without one, but the power difference is obvious. He remembers how he managed to take down the sea dragon so quickly, but realizes that a big part of that success was thanks to the high-level gear the others were using. After a while, Eldo reaches a local shop. The place is lively, full of customers, and packed with all kinds of weapons. Looking around, he admits that the capital's weapon stores have a solid selection. But the more he inspects the inventory, the clearer it becomes that every staff on display is meant for wizards. A sage can technically use any staff, but only a proper sage staff can bring out the full strength of the class. Eldo starts thinking that sooner or later, he might need to ask an old friend for help. Sometime later, he arrives at a massive building. At the entrance, he's greeted by a familiar girl who jokingly says it's been so long, well, since yesterday. She asks what's brought him back so urgently. Eldo explains that he's been shopping all morning but hasn't found what he's looking for. He pulls out the card she gave him earlier and says it's clearly something special. Ever since he got it, people have been treating him differently, like at the tavern where they started apologizing to him and even rolled out the red carpet. The girl doesn't look surprised and simply asks what exactly he's searching for. Eldo says he's looking for a staff. That catches her off guard. She asks why a swordsman is suddenly searching for a staff. Eldo says she's wrong, he's not a swordsman, he's a sage. The girl pauses, clearly confused, and admits she's never heard of that class before. She asks if it's something in between a swordsman and a wizard. Eldo explains that sage is a purely magical profession, nothing to do with swordsmanship. He says swordsman is just a starter class. She's surprised. If he's purely a mage, how did he manage to repel a sea dragon's attack? Eldo tells her even a beginner can swing a sword like that. She's not convinced. Sea dragons are A-rank monsters, and beginners don't survive those kinds of encounters. Eldo just shrugs and says anyone can fight like that with enough training. But deep down, he knows his real path is as a sage. The girl still thinks he's wasting his talent on anything other than swordsmanship. But she admits he must have his reasons if he's that determined to get a staff. So she offers to show him the best ones her family has. They walk into the weapon room, and Eldo is blown away. The entire place is filled with high-grade weapons, and all the staffs there look amazing. But as he scans the room, he realizes that none of them are quite right for a sage. Then his eyes land on a plain-looking staff in the corner. He points to it, and says that one's perfect. He asks if she minds if he takes it. She says she does mind, but only because it's not worth recommending. That staff was found in some ancient ruins, and according to her, it's completely useless. But Eldo disagrees. He picks it up and instantly knows. This is what a sage staff should feel like. It's simple, unpolished, but it feels right. He figures people probably overlooked it because it was once used by a magician. Then he notices the price tag. It says 25 million gil. He stares at it, completely stunned. The girl says every staff in the collection is expensive, even if some aren't that functional. But payment doesn't have to be in money. Eldo awkwardly pulls out his sword and says all he has is cash, and a sword worth maybe 150 gil. She shakes her head. What she wants is his guild card number. She's willing to buy it for 30 million gil. Eldo looks down at the card and realizes what this really means. he'll basically owe her 30 million. The girl explains she's not forcing him into anything. She just wants the numbers so she can send him personal requests. He doesn't have to accept them, but she plans to reward him well if he does. Eldo realizes she's willing to pay just for the chance to offer him work. He asks if that's not too much for someone like him, just an F-rank adventurer. She says that's what makes this even better. She wants to secure him before any other trading company discovers his power. 30 million gil is the amount usually offered for A-rank adventurers. He understands. She's making an investment. Eldo smiles and accepts the deal. He takes the staff with him and tells her to go easy on the personal orders. She grins and says she'll be waiting. Later, Eldo walks through the city streets. He figures this is just what you'd expect from a trading company head, buying a top-tier weapon without hesitation. But truth is, he got more than he needed. Still, he's nervous about what kind of assignments Mina might send. If they're too extreme, he'll just refuse. As he walks, Eldo suddenly stops. He senses something behind him. It feels like he's being followed. Holding his new staff, he slips into a nearby alley and calls out, demanding whoever's there show themselves. If they don't, he'll treat them as an enemy. Suddenly, a man rushes out of the alley with his hands up, shouting for Eldo to wait. He insists he's not suspicious and quickly removes his hat, explaining that he's from the guild. Eldo asks if that's true, and the man nods, saying he saw Eldo in action back on the ship and became interested in him. Eldo asks if the man was really on that ship and why he followed him. The man laughs and says he wasn't stalking, just observing. He wanted to recruit Eldo as a scout for the guild because of how strong he seemed with the sword. Eldo asks what being a scout means. The man explains it's a role known as a righteous tamer. Unlike a regular swordsman, a tamer gets a steady, high reward and is trusted with special jobs. He was looking for someone who could fit the role. Eldo compares it to being a public servant. It sounds useful for someone with a low rank, even if it might involve doing some dirty work. Still, he declines, saying he wants to act freely for now. The man understands and says he won't push, but if Eldo ever changes his mind, he's welcome at the guild. He laughs, adding that anyone sharp enough to spot a tail is worth keeping an eye on. He says if Eldo mentions the name Ligia's at the guild, he'll be accepted immediately. Now alone, Eldo thinks about it. There was no Righteous Tamer class in Broken Balance Online. In the game, quests kept updating and players didn't get punished for ignoring them. But in this world, there are actual clients, and ignoring quests could mean serious consequences. He decides to just start with what he can handle. Eldo heads to the Adventurers Guild and notices something strange. The quest board is nearly empty. Despite being the capital's guild, there are hardly any taming assignments. That means most tamers have nothing to do. He walks up to the administrator and says he wants to ask about some available tasks. The girl at the counter sweetly asks what exactly Eldo is looking for. He says he's interested in taming monster assignments. She tells him there aren't many in the capital. The royal troops handle most of the monster pacification here, alongside their training. So there's not much left for adventurers. Eldo realizes he'll need to move somewhere else if he wants to pursue taming. He thanks her for the information and says he'll pass on the assignment for now. He also asks if it's possible to change professions here. The girl smiles and asks what profession he wants to register. Eldo says he wants to become a sage. But the girl replies that the profession ball doesn't recognize that class. Eldo quickly understands the issue. In this world, only professions obtained through the coming-of-age ceremony are officially accepted. Anything not verified by the profession ball isn't recognized. To officially register a profession with the guild, the person has to touch the ball and get approval. Wizards are verified by the wizard's ball. But since Sage isn't part of the formal system, it won't be acknowledged. Eldo apologizes and says he'll keep his current registration. Just because he's a beginner doesn't mean it's a bad thing. The girl says she doesn't know much about lower professions, but maybe the ball for lower classes might respond to him. Eldo asks what she means by lower professions. She explains that those include berserkers and saints. They're usually found in low-ranking parties, and most people who choose those paths tend to quit halfway through. Eldo remembers how things worked back in BBO. There were two types of professionals, both basic and higher. Basic professions were things like wizard, swordsman, archer, healer. Higher professions included sage, hero, berserker, and saint. But unlike BBO, these top-tier professions barely ever show up during coming-of-age ceremonies in this world. What was considered the best in BBO is seen as the worst here. Probably because basic classes level up faster with each monster kill, so people stick with what's efficient. But Eldo knows that even at low levels, higher professions have stronger abilities. If the level gap isn't too wide, they'll always outperform others, and that means people won't kick you from teams easily. Eldo then asks why a saint is treated as a low-tier class. Even their basic skill, divine healing, restores more health than any healer. But the girl seems confused. She's never heard of divine healing. That stuns Eldo. She's a guild administrator yet doesn't even know the basic abilities of saints. He figures it's better not to push the issue and stay low profile. She agrees. As Eldo walks through the streets, he starts thinking that even the capital has nothing to offer him. If he wants actual work, he needs to find a different city. But before that, he plans to visit one last place and say goodbye. He enters the room where the girl is seated on the couch. She asks if he needs anything. Eldo tells her he just came to let her know that he's leaving the capital. He picks up a cup of tea and says he became an adventurer for a reason, but there are no real pacification missions in this city. The girl replies that things have been peaceful lately. Maybe too peaceful. Letting someone like Eldo go might turn out to be a huge loss for the kingdom. Eldo tells her not to exaggerate, but she insists she's not. She says there are only a few strong adventurers in the country, and they have a massive impact on the economy. Eldo's one of them. It was him who saved the Manga company's transport ship from sinking. That ship wasn't just carrying supplies. It had major players on board, economic leaders, top guild members, even her. If that ship had gone down, the country would have been thrown into chaos. Now Eldo finally gets it. That ship really was something else. The girl changes the topic and asks where he plans to go next. Eldo says he looked at the map and decided on the nearby town of Fiesta. She says that's a solid choice. He should be able to find good assignments there. Then she pauses. Something clicks. She says there's actually a decent taming mission still available here in the capital. That catches Eldo's attention. She explains it's a job to eliminate a giant mole, rank C. Eldo hadn't heard of that monster before. In his mind, he figures this must be one of the monsters unique to this world. Eldo asks where the place is. The girl says Manga company owns fields in the capital, though they're small compared to the grain-producing regions. Eldo learns that Manga is also involved in agriculture, which he didn't know before. He asks if giant moles have really appeared in these fields. The girl confirms it, and says that if Eldo starts now, she'll pay 500,000 gil for each monster, and wants him to eliminate all of them. The young man realizes this is an unbelievable reward for a regular pacification mission, and immediately agrees to take it. The girl thanks him and says it's actually a very difficult task. Eldo is a bit surprised and asks if it's really that serious. She explains that the giant moles hide underground, which makes them hard to deal with. Eldo replies that he'll at least try. The girl suggests he take the map and a written request before heading out. Sometime later, Eldo leaves the city and arrives at the company's field. Based on the map, he's at the right place. Looking around, he comments that everything here looks just like a countryside landscape. He now understands that even in the capital, places like this exist. The girl had mentioned small fields, but until now, he hadn't understood where they were located. He decides not to overthink it and heads to ask the local staff directly. He walks over to a small wooden house and knocks on the door. A woman steps out and asks if he has any business with the rural administration of Manga company. Eldo says he came on behalf of the company head, Mina, and shows the written order. The woman takes the sheet, lights up, and thanks him for accepting the request. She calls him an adventurer and says she's counting on him. Eldo stops her and says he came to tame the giant moles. He asks which of the fields belong to Manga's company. The woman tells him all the land around them belongs to Manga. Eldo is surprised by how massive the area is. He remembers Mina calling them small fields and wonders where exactly they're supposed to be small. He realizes this is just like the tavern, another understatement, and starts to get a better sense of how powerful Mashia's company actually is. He then asks an important question. Clearing the field might damage the crops, so he wants to make sure that won't be a problem. The woman says as long as he doesn't burn the place down with fire magic, it should be fine. She then apologizes for sounding rude and asks if he's really going to do this alone. If it takes too long, she suggests he finds someone to help. Eldo says there's no need, since all the monsters will come to him anyway. The woman doesn't understand what he means. Eldo uses the ability ground bait. This skill spreads magic through the surrounding ground, and since underground monsters don't rely on sight but instead hunt using smell or magical sensing, it's the perfect bait. Eldo plans to lure the monsters to his location. After a while, he senses them approaching. Suddenly, giant moles burst from underground. Holding his staff in front of him, Eldo calmly says he understands now. Of course the land would be destroyed if monsters like these are allowed to roam freely. He casts Ice Pillar. Shards of ice appear above, and with a tap of his staff, they crash down. The moles are frozen in place, trapped inside massive blocks of ice, unable to move. Nearby, the woman from the rural administration stands in shock. Eldo turns to her and apologizes, saying he may have caused more destruction than intended. The woman assures him everything is fine and thanks him for his help. The personal assignment to tame the giant moles is completed. Later, Eldo returns to report in. At the company, the maid announces his arrival to Mina, mentioning that the young man with the gold card has returned. Mina turns around and casually says he must have forgotten something. Eldo replies that no, he's finished the task. Mina smiles, then pauses, stunned by his words. She asks if he really completed the mission already. She reminds him that there were 20 giant moles. Eldo corrects her, there were 31 in total. He says he did a thorough sweep, and the count is accurate. He adds that he has already reported the results to the guild. Mina is shocked. It hasn't even been 3 hours since the request was given. Eldo explains that he used magic to lure the monsters. He placed attractive magical bait, then used ground bait to strike the moment they gathered. Mina says this is the first time she's heard of anything like that. She asks if he's really that skilled with both sword and magic. Eldo says it's not that he understands magic well, it's just that it's his main profession. The sword is only a secondary tool. Mina responds that Eldo doesn't even seem human at this point. Then she officially announces the mission complete. Eldo prepares to head to Fiesta. Mina says she'll pray for his journey, since traveling between cities is just part of an adventurer's life. Sometime later, Eldo visits the Adventurers Guild. The administrator greets him and hands him the reward for the Mashia Company mission, 20 million gil. Eldo is surprised by the amount. The girl says it must be an additional reward from the company. Eldo realizes that people call him too strong, but the same can easily be said about Mashia's company. A few days later, Eldo arrives in Fiesta City. He heads to the local guild and checks the quest board but finds very few tasks. He guesses it's because the city is close to the capital and probably doesn't have many monsters. Still, since he's here, he decides to take a few quests. He approaches the receptionist and asks if he can report missions accepted in another city. The girl replies that if it's within the same country, it's allowed, as long as he brings the written request and a body part from the tamed monster as proof. Eldo nods and selects a few assignments to take on. The girl at the counter says the task is to tame widow mantises and giant toads. She adds that it's good there are still errands available. Eldo asks what she means. The girl says a well-known adventurer nicknamed Flame Spear has arrived in Fiesta. She also mentions that Flame Spear has 2 names. Eldo says Flame Spear sounds like a powerful title. The girl explains there's a reason, adventurers are often given 2 names. Since Gillard's whereabouts are unknown, Flame Spear is currently considered the strongest and most famous adventurer in the world. Eldo is intrigued. He wonders if Flame Spear is really that impressive and admits he wants to meet him. He also thinks it's strange that no one knows where Dillard went. Later, Eldo is already deep in the forest near Fiesta. He decides to start his task here. He casts the spell Magic Search, sending out an invisible wave of energy. Using his magical eye, he scans the area and sees images of mantises hiding in the trees. He counts about 10 of them within a 10-kilometer radius. These are the grass mantises he needs for one of the 2 assignments. He steps forward and activates magic invisibility. His body disappears. The spell ends if another spell is cast, but it's perfect for stealth attacks. He reaches the mantises and suddenly reappears. Then, using Ring of Fire, he traps the monsters in a circle of flames. They're unable to escape. Eldo quickly narrows the ring and incinerates them. The hunt ends smoothly. He used Magic Search to locate the targets, Magic Invisibility to approach unseen, and then finish them with a controlled fire spell. For a sage hunting alone, this is a basic but highly effective tactic for taking down groups of monsters. Suddenly, something catches Eldo's attention. He uses Magic Search to investigate. In the distance, he spots a girl locked in combat with a massive gorilla-like monster. From the looks of it, this is the area boss, one of the stronger monsters that spawns at set times. Defeating it rewards a huge amount of experience and helps level up quickly. Eldo activates Magic Invisibility and quietly moves closer to observe. Even if the boss is defeated by a group, everyone involved still earns decent rewards. If the fight turns difficult, he plans to jump in at the right moment. As he approaches, he sees the girl more clearly, blonde hair, spear in hand, and locked in a fierce battle. She lunges forward, aiming her spear at the gorilla, but the boss casually deflects her attack and counters with force, sending her flying. At that moment, Eldo becomes visible again. The girl notices him, asks if he's an adventurer, and tells him to run. Then she turns back to fight without hesitation. Eldo studies the monster. Despite its size, it's fast and aggressive. It's clearly tougher to handle solo than even the sea dragon. But the girl's strength surprises him, small but incredibly skilled. Still, she looks overwhelmed. Eldo realizes he has to help. He knows his current skills aren't enough to bring the boss down, so he decides to unlock new abilities. Normally, that requires a ceremony in a church, but if the system here works like in BDO, it should still respond to commands. He spends skill points and unlocks 2 new abilities, Blood Poison, number 1208, and Shadow Fog, number 1211. Then he prepares to join the battle. Eldo says he's ready. He starts by casting Sticky Bomb, then follows up with Magic Lure, releasing waves of magical energy around him. The monster, charging toward the girl, suddenly stops, turns, and rushes straight at Eldo instead. The girl stutters in confusion, not understanding what just happened. Eldo knows the Magic Lure spell provokes monsters by drawing them toward the caster's magical signature. As the monster charges, it steps into the sticky residue from Sticky Bomb and instantly loses balance, falling face first into the ground. The girl watches in shock. Eldo quickly casts Shadow Fog, sending a dark mist directly into the monster's eyes. Then, he follows up with Blood Poison, blowing the toxic spell at the creature. With its vision clouded and its strength weakening, the boss struggles. The blonde girl walks up, stunned, asking if Eldo just took down the monster she couldn't handle alone. He notices from her tone that she wants to assert herself as the strongest. He calmly tells her to rest for now and uses a healing spell on her shoulder. The girl is surprised the pain is gone and asks what he did. Eldo simply replies that he used healing magic. Hearing that, the girl is shocked that he can use both combat and healing spells. She's never seen an adventurer like that. Eldo realizes that neither sages nor adventurers in this world seem familiar with even basic self-healing. Eldo says the main problem isn't over yet. The monster nearby isn't finished. The girl doesn't get what he means, so Eldo explains that the boss is still alive. His spells weren't strong enough to finish it off because his level is low. He says he could take it down slowly with repeated use of blood poison, but that would take too much time. He considers looking for help. He'd heard someone called Flame Spear was in the area, supposedly the strongest adventurer. The girl says that she's Flame Spear, but her friends call her Milia. Eldo is surprised. He thought someone that strong would have no trouble defeating an enraged monkey. And when he heard the title Flame Spear, he imagined a fiery giant, not a small girl. He introduces himself as Eldo and admits he didn't expect the famous adventurer to look like her. Milia says she'll continue calling him Eldo, and he can call her Milia. She blushes and says she must have looked pathetic earlier since the angry monkey completely outmatched her. Eldo quickly says that's not true at all. He shifts the topic and mentions that the name Flame Spear must come from her flame weapon ability. Milia nods, saying he's right. Eldo now realizes Milia's profession is actually hero, which in Broken Balance Online was one of the highest tier jobs, but here it's considered one of the lowest. He thinks it's a complete waste. A hero's high-level abilities are very powerful. If she had more knowledge and experience, she could have defeated the angry monkey with ease. But if she truly is a hero, then there's nothing to worry about now. Eldo asks Milia for a favor. He'll distract the monster, and she should attack it with everything she has. He says even a basic skill like a combination attack should work. Milia pauses, confused, and asks what a combination attack is. Eldo is stunned again. This world continues to surprise him. He tells her to just follow his instructions exactly. Eldo asks Milia to say the command for ability 1321, combo attack. She repeats it, and a skill panel suddenly appears in front of her. Shocked, she asks what's happening. Eldo tells her to try swinging her spear while shouting about the combination attack. She does as he says, and her spear begins to glow. Surprised, she asks if this means the ability actually activated, and if it's really possible to learn skills like this. Eldo confirms, saying there are other ways too. Milia then asks who he really is, because there's no way an F-rank adventurer should know all of this. Eldo insists that he's just someone who knows a little. Suddenly, the monkey boss reappears. It had torn up a chunk of earth stuck to its body and broken it apart. The monster slams its paws into the ground, shattering the last of the sticky spell. Eldo says his vision is blocked but warns Milia to stay alert in case the enemy attacks blindly. Milia shouts that this is their chance to get closer. Eldo says he'll release all his spells and tank the attacks directly. Milia must land the combined attack while the boss is focused on him. She says it's impossible, but Eldo tells her it's fine, he'll hold the line. She nods and takes her stance, ready to strike. Eldo steadies himself, holds out his staff, and casts a nullification spell. The enraged monkey roars and charges toward them. As it swings, Eldo stands firm and blocks the blow using a magical defense spell. It's not as strong as a full shield, but it's the sage's best protective ability. Holding his ground, Eldo yells out the signal. Now is the time, Milia must strike. Milia activates the flame weapon spell, and her spear bursts into scarlet fire. She immediately follows it up with the combination attack Eldo taught her, striking the monkey boss straight in the head. Suddenly, her pike flares up and begins to spin with intense flames. Shocked, Milia yells that she can feel it working. She rushes forward and lands a final strike right into the monster's chest. The flames swirl into a crimson vortex, and the boss starts smoking all over before collapsing, unconscious. Milia stares at her weapon, stunned that it could deliver such a powerful blow. Eldo tells her she did great, and they both leveled up. Milia says it's hard to believe the boss went down that easily. Eldo tells her it's because of her, not him, he just stalled its attacks. Milia's even more surprised, saying he's acting too casually about all of this, and there's no way someone with his knowledge could really be just an F-rank adventurer. Eldo then asks if she would be willing to form a temporary team. Milia is surprised and asks if he means they'll be working together. Eldo explains that he's been fighting a lot of bosses lately. Normally he fights solo to maximize experience, but it takes time. With Milia's firepower, they could finish them much faster. Eldo says they'll split the reward evenly, and in return, he'll teach her about abilities. He asks Milia to think it over. Milia says she has no reason to refuse, though she still doesn't believe he's really F-rank. She extends her hand and says he doesn't seem like a bad guy. They shake hands, agreeing to work together. A moment later, Milia asks about combining abilities. Eldo explains that using skill points allows you to unlock new abilities, and your choices shape the entire direction of a battle. The catch is, even with leveling up, you can't unlock everything, and skill points can't be refunded once spent. Milia asks what she should do then. If Eldo is so knowledgeable, why doesn't he just use the best abilities to become stronger? Eldo admits she might not like the answer, but there's one combination he thinks is unbeatable. Milia asks if he'll actually tell her what it is. Eldo wonders if it's too early, then asks if she's ever learned a skill manually before. Milia says yes, and adds that before she met him, she assumed new abilities just came with experience. That's how she unlocked Flame Weapon. He realizes that's the issue. In this world, most people only learn skills through the church. Milia doesn't even know how to develop them properly, which is why her understanding hasn't progressed. He asks what level she is. Milia says level 18. Eldo tells her she needs a few more levels before unlocking what he has in mind. She says that's fine but asks what they're going to do with the giant monkey. It needs to be reported to the guild, and they'll have to process the body first. Eldo says that won't be necessary. He casts a magic gathering spell, and the monkey boss sinks into a pool of dark liquid, disappearing. The girl asks where the monkey went. Eldo explains that he used the magic gathering spell to transfer it into another space. She doesn't understand what that means but decides not to press him further. She just says Eldo always finds new ways to surprise her and promises to give her best. They move on. After a while, they run into another monster. Miria charges in and strikes it in the chest with her pike while Eldo follows up with his magic. But soon, they notice the sun has already set and it's getting dark. Eldo tells Miria they shouldn't overdo it and suggests heading back to the city. He's level 10 now. Miria is level 19. She agrees to return. Later at the guild, the administrator stares in disbelief at what they brought in. Miria tells her it's an A-rank monster known as Raging Ape. The guild girl is stunned, says it's her first time seeing one, and rushes off to get the branch chief. While she's gone, Eldo leans over to Miria and quietly asks her to say she defeated the monster on her own. She's confused and asks why. Eldo says he doesn't care about credit, and he doesn't want people making a big deal out of some low-rank adventurer taking down an A-rank monster. The girl tells Eldo that if he ever changes his mind, he can speak up anytime. Suddenly, a man rushes into the room, apologizing for the delay. He asks if it's true they defeated an A-rank monster. The girl confirms it, and asks how much they'll get for the angry monkey. The man repeats the question in disbelief, asking if he heard correctly. She nods and points at Eldo, saying he did most of the work. Eldo is shocked and yells, reminding her of what they just agreed on. The girl awkwardly apologizes, saying the room went quiet and she panicked. The man, confused, says he's never seen Eldo before and asks if he has a two-name title. The girl says his name is Eldo, and that he's just an F-rank rookie. The man questions if a rookie could really handle an A-rank monster. The girl says she thought the same, but Eldo is different. Miria adds that she also felt like something was off. She explains that it's probably because of the beginner system that prevents rank ups. Eldo is surprised and asks if it's true that newbies can't rank up. Miria says yes, that it's incredibly hard for lower job classes too. She explains she had to work very hard to reach rank B. She says the system was designed to prevent inexperienced adventurers from taking on more than they could handle, since their actual strength didn't match their rank. Eldo asks if that means even completing difficult tasks won't help a rookie rank up. Miria says it used to be a bigger problem, but about 10 years ago, the system changed after reforms by someone named Cardinal Georges. As they talk, the man apologizes and says he's just following orders from above. Eldo thinks that no matter what profession you have, your real strength depends on how you use your abilities. The fact that your rank is tied to your profession feels off, almost like a setup. Maybe this Cardinal Georges really did have it out for beginners and high-tier classes. The capital church, where you could originally change jobs, is now in ruins. And these higher professions, like hero or sage, are treated strangely. Something about the whole system seems shady. Miria says that Eldo has clearly already surpassed F rank. He withstood all the monkey's attacks alone. Eldo realizes she's already forgotten what they agreed earlier. The man shakes his head and says this is unbelievable. A newcomer like Eldo at rank F handling an A-rank boss is unheard of. He asks Eldo's name again, and then confirms if he's the one who joined the guild in Ilia. He explains that rumors have been going around about a terrifyingly strong F-rank adventurer who fought off a sea dragon alone. Eldo realizes his name is already spreading faster than expected. Hiding his strength isn't really an option anymore. The man says that if Eldo really is that person, then he can offer a special procedure to raise his rank. Eldo asks if that's even possible. The man explains that with the department head's recommendation and enough achievements, the guild can approve an exception. His role in the sea dragon fight would be more than enough. Eldo thanks the man and waits for the rank up. The man asks to see his guild card and says that he's the one who should be grateful. Assisting in the promotion of a remarkable adventurer is considered a milestone even in a staff member's career. He takes a careful look at Eldo's card and notices the listed profession, sage. He says it's unknown, similar to the lower professions, and that with so little information available, Eldo may struggle. Miria says that if she had been born 20 years earlier, she might have been treated like a novice too. Eldo recalls that the hero class, like sage, is also an unknown profession. Looking at Miria, he realizes that hero still isn't recognized the way it should be. Since sage doesn't appear during the coming-of-age ceremony, it'll always be treated with suspicion. But Eldo isn't bothered. He knows the sage class inside and out. The man confirms everything's in order and officially raises Eldo to rank E. Under the current system, adventurers can only go up one rank at a time, so Eldo will need to return with more achievements for the next promotion. They shift the conversation back to the main issue, the value of the Angry Monkey's materials. Later, Eldo leaves the guild carrying large bags filled with gil. Altogether, he has over 120 million. In this world, 200,000 gil is enough to live comfortably for a month. With 120 million, he wouldn't have to worry about money again. The bags are too heavy, so Eldo stores them in another space using a magic gathering spell. Milia calls out to him and says they've already sorted out their affairs, so maybe now he can tell her about the abilities. Eldo says it's too late today and promises to give her a lecture tomorrow before they start hunting in a new area. The next morning, they arrive in a forest. Eldo asks if the girl is ready. Milia gets into a fighting stance but tells him to wait because there's a blood tiger right in front of her. Eldo thinks that the blood tiger in BBO wasn't that strong. He asks if this one is dangerous. The girl says it's the strongest B-rank monster with high stats, endurance, and even better mobility. Eldo says he understands, but with the combinations he showed her earlier, she should still be able to handle it. The girl asks if Eldo is trying to comfort her, then grabs her spear and says that honestly, she thinks she can do it. Eldo smiles and watches her. She lunges forward with the spear as the tiger charges at her. The girl activates the attack field ability, and her body starts glowing, covered in a faint light. She dodges the tiger and moves behind it with ease. Eldo knows that attack field boosts the user's stats for 10 minutes. The girl uses a combination attack and hits the tiger with her spear, then follows up with another combo and lands another hit. The monster feels pain in its neck, then the girl jabs it in the side with the other end of her spear and uses the ability Guard Pierce. Eldo knows this skill weakens the target's armor in a specific spot. She follows up with support attack, which sharply increases the damage of her next strike. The tiger tries to escape by jumping into the trees. The girl doesn't let up and activates full burst crash. Eldo sees that this ability sacrifices all previously activated skills to unleash a massive attack boost. It's the hero class's ultimate move. The tiger keeps running, but Milia steps forward and unleashes a fiery projectile from her spear that slices the beast in half. She stands still as smoke rises from her weapon, finally exhaling. Eldo watches silently, thinking about how this class, second only to the sage in one-on-one fight, has incredible potential. With her physical boosts, Milia can overwhelm even multiple enemies at once. It's one of the rare professions capable of solo combat. The girl looks at her hands and smiles, proud that she pulled it off. Suddenly, another tiger lunges at Milia from behind. She turns around, startled, and realizes there are several of them. The tiger charges, but Eldo appears between them, stopping the monster with his ability. Miria, shocked, opens her eyes and sees Eldo shielding her. He calmly tells her she did well with the ability combo, especially for her first try. The girl thanks him, then points out that this isn't the right time for a conversation. The tiger swings its paw at Eldo from the side, but he blocks it again without effort. He says he forgot to mention something important: heroes have a defense ability even stronger than magic defense. It's called super defense. He also explains another strong combo, using critical defense to dodge and immediately counter with a combination attack. He already used magical search to scout the area and found 3 more blood tigers ahead. He'll handle this one, and she can try fighting the rest on her own. The girl hesitates, wondering how he'll manage alone. Eldo faces the tiger and casts fire arrows. Flames erupt, swallowing the monster and burning it to ash. Milia watches, unconvinced, and says she was starting to think the young man couldn't handle the hunt on his own. Eldo replies that his level and mana reserves are still low, so he can't afford to waste everything in one go. That's why he's relying on her to help keep the hunt efficient. He says there's a herd of blood tigers just ahead, but since they have plenty of time, there's no need to rush. Milia smiles and agrees with his plan. Milia examines her hero defense ability, super defense, while Eldo explains that if she focuses on a specific spot, the shield will form clear outlines. He adds that this barrier can withstand multiple opponents and even localized attacks, making it a very useful skill. Milia thanks him for the help, but Eldo reminds her that even for someone with a rank like hers, she still needs to properly master ability combinations first. They soon arrive at a small cliff and spot 3 blood tigers below, feasting on their prey. Eldo asks if she's ready. Milia winks and confidently says he can count on her, then leaps off the cliff to launch the attack. But Eldo feels an uneasy premonition. Milia locks onto her target and uses shockwave, damaging several enemies at once before spinning into a wide slash that cuts across 3 more. She smiles, believing she has the upper hand, but the tigers recover quickly and surround her from all sides. Shocked that her attacks weren't enough to finish them, she tries to use the wide strike again. The ability hits, but the monsters endure and close in. Their fangs glint as they prepare to strike her down. In desperation, Milia screams and activates her shield, wrapping herself inside a glowing protective sphere. She calls out to Eldo, who instantly fires a volley of fire arrows, engulfing the tigers in flames. When the danger passes, Milia clutches her head, trembling. Eldo approaches, and she rushes happily toward him, relieved. But Eldo simply raises 2 fingers and tells her she made 2 critical mistakes. First, she didn't activate her boosts like attack field and auxiliary attack before striking. Second, she misunderstood the ability cooldowns. A large area skill needs at least 10 seconds before it can be reused. Spamming it only wastes time, when she could have been calmly chaining other abilities in between. Hearing this, Milia lowers her head, apologizing for getting carried away. Eldo assures her that she actually did well, since she quickly figured out how to defend and counter using super defense. He says she still has a good sense of the battlefield. Milia blushes at the compliment and thanks him shyly, while Eldo smiles back. Then he suggests they switch roles for the next fight and keep moving forward, which Milia agrees to without hesitation. After some time, Eldo and Milia return to the guild. The guild master and the female administrator freeze in shock as they see what the 2 adventurers have brought back. Standing before them, Eldo calmly says they came to collect the reward for their hunt. Behind them lies a massive pile of blood tiger corpses. Eldo counts them out, 73 in total. The administrator screams in disbelief, while the guild master is so stunned that his glasses crack in his hands. The man mutters that even with Flame's spear helping, taking down this many monsters in one hunt is beyond excessive. The administrator insists that Eldo is unbelievably strong, and even though he's only ranked E, It's hard to believe this result is real. Eldo then waves his hand and summons even more tiger corpses out of thin air. The guild master panics, asking what on earth he's doing. Eldo explains that he's simply using magic gathering, a skill that lets him transfer defeated monsters into another space and call them back whenever he wants. The guild master stares in awe, saying he's never seen magic like this before, and calls it extraordinary. Milia adds that Eldo's strength isn't just in magic. He also has deep knowledge and tactics far beyond any adventurer she's met. But she admits she doesn't understand why someone like him goes so far to avoid fame. The guild master replies that he understands and promises confidentiality. Eldo isn't convinced his words are trustworthy, but either way, no one would believe a story about an F-rank rookie pulling this off. The guild master then asks if Eldo should be promoted to D rank. His results already more than qualify. But he explains that reaching C rank requires confirmation from another department head, so it may not be possible to climb further the same way. Eldo says he'll leave it in the guild's hands. After a short while, the guild master hands over the new card and confirms that Eldo is now rank D. When asked if they plan to keep hunting, Eldo thinks it over. With the amount of money they've earned, there's no need to chase rewards anymore. The real reason to continue will be training and developing their skills. Milia looks down, clearly upset, and says she'll try her best to level up. She wants to take on tasks that count as real achievements in the guild, something that will bring her closer to her ultimate goal. Curious, Eldo asks what that goal is. Milia hesitates, apologizing for not consulting him first. Eldo reassures her that it's fine, but before she can explain further, the guild master cuts in. He mentions that there is indeed a mission that requires strong adventurers like them. It's a reconnaissance job in the Forest of Death. Hearing the name, Eldo frowns, saying it doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Milia agrees, pointing out that the name is no exaggeration. The Forest of Death is infamous. Almost no one returns from its depths. Only 10% of those who venture inside ever make it back alive. The guild master explains why. Only high-ranking monsters appear there, making it one of the deadliest places in the region. Because of this, the guild is very careful about who they entrust with such an assignment. Milia turns to Eldo and asks what they should do, though she believes they're capable of handling it. Eldo agrees but says they should look at the mission details first before deciding. The guild master spreads out some papers and shows them a map of the forest. He marks a spot and sketches something unusual on the side. It's a massive pillar, towering and unnatural. Eldo studies it and mutters if it's really a sealed pillar. The guild master freezes, shocked that Eldo knows about it. In BBO, sealed pillars were places where raid bosses were locked away, monsters far stronger than even area bosses. During special events, the seals would break, unleashing those nightmare-level enemies. The guild master explains that the current mission is to confirm whether this rumor is true, because if a sealed pillar really has appeared, preparations must be made immediately. Eldo becomes serious, saying he understands. After thinking it over, he agrees to the mission. The guild master thanks him and says they owe him one. Later, Eldo turns to Milia, reminding her that this mission is extremely dangerous and could even put them in the middle of a rampage. Milia answers without hesitation that she's fully aware, and she still wants to go. The next morning, the two are already deep inside the Forest of Death. Fierce monsters lunge at them from every direction, and Eldo and Milia strike back in perfect combination, defeating one group after another. Eldo sighs, noting that the forest lives up to its name, filled with aggressive enemies at every turn. Milia insists they'll push through no matter what, as long as they keep moving forward. Still, Eldo notices something odd about her mood and asks why she seems so restless. He wonders if achievements really matter that much to her. Milia explains that adventurers have a special reward system. Eldo is confused, saying he's never heard of such a thing. Milia then reveals the truth. If an adventurer reaches a rank and earns enough merits that benefit the country, they can be granted the title of aristocrat. It's the only path for an adventurer to rise into nobility. She admits that her goal is to gain that title in order to restore her bankrupt family. Eldo finally understands why she's been pushing herself so hard. She's fighting not just for herself but to revive her family's name. He tells her that if that's her dream, then she'll need to accomplish something truly great to achieve it. He urges her to stay focused and keep moving forward. Milia nods and agrees with determination. After some time, Eldo and Milia reach a massive stone pillar with a strange, elaborate drawing carved into its surface. Eldo studies it carefully and asks if this is truly the sealed pillar. Milia confirms, but Eldo goes further, saying the orange glow means it's facing Fiesta. By his calculation, they have only 5 days left before the raid boss appears. Milia stares in shock, asking if he figured that out just by looking at it. Eldo explains that the color of the pillar serves as a countdown. Blue, yellow, orange, red, and finally black. The sequence marks the stages before the monster is released. With the pillar already orange, the clock is ticking. Even though 5 days might sound like enough, it's far less time than it seems. He suggests they hurry back and report immediately. They return to the Adventurers Guild, where the guild master greets them and remarks on their quick return. He asks about the sealed pillar, and Milia reports that only 5 days remain until the rampage begins. The man looks confused, so Eldo explains that the pillar's color reveals how much time is left. The guild master thanks them for the information and rushes off to activate the city's protective device. A few minutes later, he returns and apologizes for keeping them waiting. He explains that the mechanism will be fully active in 4 days, meaning they'll be shielded when the rampage starts. Then he brings up their reward. For Eldo, he promises to write a recommendation for promotion to C rank. For Milia, if she manages to withstand the rampage and prove herself, he'll recommend her for the A rank promotion exam. But he also warns them that none of this matters unless they endure what's coming. The rampage itself must first be faced and repelled. He asks Eldo and Milia to remain in the city and prepare. 5 days later, the day of the rampage arrives. A colossal dome of magical energy unfolds across the entire city, shielding the people inside from the disaster about to begin. As the massive dome covers the city, Milia looks up in awe and asks if this is really the defense system. Eldo nods, saying it is, and it seems to have activated just in time. Milia admits it's her first time seeing anything like this and wonders if it can truly protect them. Eldo explains that the dome doesn't block monsters directly. Instead, it releases a special magical power that frightens them away and conceals the city from sight. The monsters eventually give up and disperse. But suddenly, the dome flickers and vanishes. Milia gasps, pointing out that it's gone, and asks if that's supposed to happen. Eldo shakes his head. Something is wrong. He tells her they need to check it immediately. They sprint toward the device that generates the barrier, only to find the mechanism shattered. Nearby lie 2 bodies, one dead, the other badly wounded. Eldo rushes forward and demands to know what happened. The injured man explains that someone infiltrated with the guards and sabotaged the device, destroying it. Eldo's eyes fall on the dead man's arm, where a tattoo stands out clearly. He recognizes it instantly, the emblem of the Garden of Despair, a notorious organization. Realization hits him. This wasn't an accident. The sabotage was deliberate, timed perfectly with the rampage to cripple the city's defenses. He asks if there's any way to repair the device. But the wounded man shakes his head. It's impossible. The barrier is an ancient artifact, passed down from their ancestors, and no one in this era truly understands how it works. Eldo realizes the truth. It isn't even technology of this world. It's an out-of-place artifact beyond their control. The man says they'll still attempt repairs, but even if it were possible, restarting it would take at least 4 days. That's time they don't have. He immediately gives orders to warn the citizens and summon every available adventurer to prepare for what's coming. Eldo realizes that even if he manages to fend off a large swarm of monsters, raid bosses are on an entirely different level. Any raid boss that appears will unleash attacks capable of devastating the surrounding area, meaning there will inevitably be casualties. He admits there's nothing he can do to prevent that. Taking a deep breath, he tells Miria he's leaving the townspeople in her care. Miria asks what he plans to do, and Eldo answers that he will try to stop the rampage. She presses him further, questioning how he could possibly manage it, even as powerful as he is. Eldo simply says he has one idea, but it isn't guaranteed to work, and Miria must act with that uncertainty in mind. Without another word, Eldo soars out of the city. Miria shouts after him, but he's already gone. A few minutes later, he's deep in the forest, spotting both familiar and strange monsters charging in the direction he just left. The sheer number overwhelms him at first, but Eldo knows there's another way to halt the chaos. He must confront the raid boss itself. He lands beside the pillar, now free from its chains and floating in the air. Suddenly, cracks spider across its surface, and it shatters into pieces. The earth trembles violently, and a single, enormous eye emerges from beneath the ground. From the depths, something begins to rise, a colossal form that dominates the forest. It's a raid boss, a lightning dragon, its body crackling with electricity, massive wings tearing through the skies. Eldo tightens his grip on his staff, feeling the energy surge around him, and declares silently that he's ready to begin. In BBO, the sage was known as the strongest profession, making up nearly 80% of all players. Eldo smiles to himself, decisively thinking that it's time to show why. Meanwhile, chaos erupts in the city. Miria commands the townspeople to hurry as a massive flock of monsters closes in. From the watchtower, a man peers through his telescope and confirms the flood of creatures heading straight for them. Miria steels herself and rushes toward the city gates. Citizens shout after her, warning that the gates are about to close. She yells back, insisting they close the gates quickly while she handles the monsters, her voice carrying urgency as she calls out to Eldo as if speaking directly to him. At that moment, Eldo stands before the massive lightning dragon, a grin forming as memories flash through his mind. He remembers the early days of BBO, when this dragon was the strongest boss at the initial level, delivering him countless defeats despite his high level. He wonders how many hundreds of times he died back then. Now, the dragon awakens fully and locks eyes on him. Lightning erupts from its body, striking the tree beside Eldo, but he barely flinches. He anticipated the dragon's destructive aura and had a plan. The dragon strikes again, aiming directly at Eldo with a bolt of electricity. He remains unharmed, protected by his anti-magic electricity skill, which reduces electric damage to 0. When the dragon swings its enormous paw, Eldo deftly dodges, landing a safe distance away. He realizes a direct attack might not be possible yet. Suddenly, he notices the divine lightning skill activating above him. A glowing sphere forms around his position and then detonates. Eldo manages a last-moment dodge, his hair lightened from the electric discharge. Looking at his scorched arm, he realizes the damage is minimal, a mere graze, but the intensity and stress far surpass what any normal health loss in the game could produce. Divine lightning is a deadly ability, capable of striking the ground with such destructive force that anyone caught at its center can die instantly. Eldo, at level 18, is far below the level 50 recommended to face this dragon. He quickly uses self-healing to mend his scorched arm, then steels himself. He's fought this dragon countless times before, and he's determined this time won't be any different. He activates one of his abilities, summoning a complex array of magical seals before him. He begins layering multiple fields: attack field, enhancement field, berserker field, ice field, and super magic field. Eldo plans to activate all these fields simultaneously and imbue his staff with earth magic, the natural counter to the dragon's lightning. He channels earth magic and super earth magic into his weapon, feeling his hands tremble under the immense strain. The load on his body is far greater than usual, and controlling these combined powers will be extremely taxing, but in raw magical strength, Eldo is several thousand times stronger than the dragon. He notices a subtle movement from the dragon and anticipates another divine lightning strike. But it's not as simple as he thought. The dragon slams down from above, forcing Eldo to leap back. He grins, realizing the dragon's first attempt caught him off guard, but he won't fall for it again. He charges forward, only for the dragon to erupt from the ground, sending clouds of dust into the air to obscure his vision. Eldo recognizes the tactic immediately. The dragon's next attack will be far more dangerous and deliberate. Eldo jumps to the side just in time as a sudden bolt of lightning strikes from the side. He realizes it's a lightning sprint. Unlike divine lightning, which targets a single point, this attack strikes in a straight line. It's one of the dragon's signature patterns. The young man dodges one bolt after another, barely able to see, but his body moves instinctively, remembering the attacks from countless battles in BBO. He thrusts his staff forward, attempting to use his abilities, only to feel their limits. Even the most powerful boost magic has severe drawbacks, immense mana consumption and a drain on life force. He can feel his vitality slipping, something foreign to the game, but at his level, there's no other way to bring down this monster. The dragon swipes its massive paw, dispersing the smoke it had summoned to obscure Eldo's vision. It finally notices him. Eldo takes a moment to catch his breath, observing as the dragon roars and swings its enormous paw. Then, with a sudden, sharp motion, the dragon crosses its claws over its chest. A massive cross-shaped strike cleaves through the earth, carved with air and claw. The dragon scans the ground, searching for Eldo, but he's nowhere to be seen. Eldo remarks that he's merely dodging, relying on his extensive BBO experience. Suddenly, Eldo appears above the dragon, catching it off guard. He knows that even a head-on attack with his low level wouldn't be effective. This is his only chance. Raising his staff, he channels every possible enhancement into his strongest attack. He lifts a colossal boulder, larger even than the dragon itself, high above his head. With a determined shout, he declares that this attack will finally finish the dragon. Lowering his staff, he unleashes his earth magic ability, Giant Stone Hammer, sending the massive boulder plummeting directly onto the lightning beast. The dragon collapses under the sheer weight of the boulder, losing consciousness for a brief moment. Eldo stares down at it, unsure if he has truly won. Suddenly its eyes snap open, and a massive thundercloud forms above it. His heart skips a beat. He thinks the dragon is using divine lightning, meaning it's still alive. But as he looks closer, he realizes it's not divine lightning at all. It's a spell he hasn't seen in BBO for a long time, far more powerful than any ordinary lightning attack. This is the lightning dragon's ultimate trump card, unleashed only when it's on the brink of death. A magical strike so powerful it cannot be dodged. Torpedo extermination. Eldo knows that a single hit would erase him completely. Raising his hand, he forces a nervous smile and reminds himself that this monster must be defeated at all costs. Timing it perfectly, he activates Giant Stone Hammer at just a third of its full size. It's barely enough, but it's all he needs. The enormous boulder crashes down on the dragon again, pinning it to the ground with crushing force. Eldo struggles to catch his breath, drained from the immense exertion. Looking at the battered dragon, he wipes sweat from his face and announces that the taming is complete. The life or death task has been accomplished. Meanwhile, Mia continues fighting off the monsters threatening the city. She launches attack after attack, overpowering a massive tiger, only to face an enraged monkey. The creature slams its paws together, but she narrowly dodges and leaps, striking from behind to defeat it. Her strength is waning, and a horde of monsters begins to surround her. Directly in front stands a huge tiger, flanked by several ferocious wolves. She realizes she can no longer hold her ground. Suddenly, the tiger begins to dissolve, vanishing completely. Mia freezes in surprise, and then sees Eldo, flying straight toward the city. The young man surveys the battlefield, noticing several dead monsters scattered around. He asks Miria if she was the one who defeated them. She shakes her head and explains that the monsters had vanished into thin air, dissipated by Eldo's hand. Eldo apologizes for taking so long to finish the task, but reassures her that the raid boss has been destroyed and the rampage has stopped. Miria hesitates, asking if that's really true. Eldo reaches into his pocket and pulls out a dragon fang, holding it up as proof. Miria's eyes widen in surprise. The raid boss had been an S-rank enemy, and the fang confirms the scale of Eldo's victory. She studies the remains, noting that even a fragment of an S-rank monster carries an intimidating aura. The fact that Eldo faced one-on-one and emerged victorious to stop the rampage impresses her deeply. She thanks him, acknowledging that he saved her life once again. Eldo smiles but says that she deserves thanks too, and then asks for something in return. Miria, always willing to help, promises she will do everything she can. Eldo requests that she claimed she was the one who defeated the raid boss and stopped the rampage. Miria gasps in shock, firmly rejecting the idea. She insists she did nothing, and that claiming the elimination of an S-rank monster would be dishonest. Besides, the reward for such a feat would be immense, and it must be reported correctly. Eldo nods, explaining that while she promised to do all she could, it would be more practical for Miria to report the victory. The system only allows one rank advancement at a time, so it would benefit her more to move from rank B to rank A than for him to advance from D to C. His true goal is to help her become an aristocrat, and having an aristocratic ally is far more useful than taking the reward for himself. Miria looks at Eldo awkwardly, then closes her eyes and says she understands everything. She tells him that she needs to become an aristocrat as soon as possible and pay off her debts. Eldo reassures her, saying he's sure she will succeed. She thanks him again, but then laughs slightly, calling him unusual. No newbie could possibly defeat an S-rank monster alone. She admits that Eldo feels completely out of this world. Surprised, Eldo asks her what she means. Miria smiles, winks, and says she's just joking, such things simply don't happen. Eldo presses her to at least say it this time, as they had agreed, and she tells him to rely on her. Despite her words, a strange unease creeps over him. Meanwhile, warriors stand at the city gates, ready to confront the approaching monsters, confused as to why no attacks come. The observer in the watchtower also struggles to understand. The monsters should have appeared by now, but they have vanished. Out of nowhere, Miria appears before them. Recognized instantly as the fire pike, the warriors ask what she is doing there. She awkwardly explains that she dealt with the S-rank dragon that emerged from the sealed pillar, and that all the monsters disappeared because the main threat had been neutralized. The warriors repeat her words in disbelief, asking if she really defeated it alone. Miria produces a fragment of the dragon as proof. The warriors examine it, and despite her low rank, can sense the immense power radiating from it. They confirm the truth of her words and rejoice. The riot is over, and the city is saved. Just then, the Adventurers Guild leader approaches Miria, praising her for her incredible work. The guild leader remarks that defeating the monster from the sealed pillar in this way was unprecedented. While he had suspected taming the main monster might help, it was far too strong for anyone to defeat before. Most adventurers had simply waited out the rampage rather than challenge it. With the mechanism broken and the threat neutralized, he admits he had been terrified, but thanks to Miria, everyone survived. Then the man turns his attention to Eldo. Miria shudders slightly before admitting that she let him escape. She explains that he was far too strong to confront directly, especially against an S-rank monster. The man nods but reminds her that no matter how powerful he seems, a rookie is still a rookie. He asks her to recount everything that happened, noting that no one has ever managed to defeat an S-rank monster before. The information would be invaluable. Miria shakes her head, saying she remembers almost nothing. From the side, Eldo watches quietly, wondering if everything worked out for her mentally. He silently apologizes for putting her in such a dangerous position. The man, curious, asks if she had specifically aimed for the horns. Miria confirms, explaining that she recognized them as the dragon's weak point and directed her abilities there whenever she could. The man's eyes widen in surprise. He points out that dragon horns are usually the hardest parts to break, and the fact that she identified a weak spot demonstrates extraordinary courage and insight. Miria smiles, modestly noting that her reputation isn't unearned. The man promises that he will report that the fire spear, Miria, defeated an S-rank monster. Miria thanks him, but he adds that the reward will be delayed for several days since there is no precedent for such a case. He asks if he can take the dragon's rock as proof of pacification, suggesting that the accomplishment could help her advance not just to a rank but potentially even S rank. However, he admits that he cannot make that decision alone. He will promote her as best he can, but the Council of Higher Authorities will have the final say. Miria nods, understanding the situation. The man bows and asks permission to thank her again, leaving her feeling very embarrassed. After a while, Miria leaves the Adventurers Guild building and finds Eldo waiting outside. He greets her, telling her she did a good job. She admits she still feels embarrassed. Eldo apologizes, and Miria reassures him that thanks to him, she has come closer to achieving her goals, but she vows that she will never remain in debt. The girl turns to Eldo and asks what he plans to do next. He replies that he intends to continue completing quests and leveling up. It would be ideal, he says, if there were a place with monsters strong enough to challenge him. Miria mentions that people usually talk about the Forest of Death, where the monsters are moderately strong. Eldo raises an eyebrow, asking if she doesn't think the same now. Miria smiles and agrees. She then shifts the conversation, saying she recently heard something interesting. An adventurer she knows told her about events in the city of Eris. In the vast Eris forest, a huge number of monsters are appearing, and clearing quests are everywhere. Eldo suggests she should go there too, pointing out that with her abilities, she could reduce the number of quests significantly. Miria replies that she will stay in their current city for a while, waiting for the council's decision. But she asks why Eldo shouldn't go there. Eldo admits she's right. If so many tasks are waiting, it's probably better for him to go. Both of them understand that this is likely where their paths will diverge. Miria grows serious and admits that since they met, she's caused Eldo nothing but trouble. She fears she'll never be able to properly thank him, even though it hasn't been long. She thanks him sincerely from the bottom of her heart. Eldo interrupts, telling her not to speak as if this were a farewell. He asks if there's any other way she could do him a great favor without taking credit for his achievements. Miria's face reddens, and she quickly apologizes, promising that such a thing will never happen again. Eldo chuckles, telling Miria that he was just joking. She tells him to stop, insisting that he won't disappear, and wishes him to take care of himself. Eldo nods, telling her to take care as well, and with that they say their goodbyes. Stepping out of the city, Eldo surveys the path ahead. A broad smile spreads across his face as he declares that it's time to head to Eris. In the great forest of Eris, a heavy downpour drenches the thick canopy. A massive tiger with enormous fangs charges through the undergrowth, only to be struck on the head by an axe. Dozens of arrows follow, and enormous horned monsters descend upon the tiger, tearing it apart with their huge hands. The beast roars, ripping into its prey, while its companions gather around to feast as well. Flying above, Eldo examines the area with interest, consulting his map. He mutters that if the reports are correct, the location should be somewhere nearby, though nothing is clear from above. Deciding he needs to get closer, he lands on the grass, scanning ahead. Everything appears secure. He cannot be seen from above. He observes a city ahead, enclosed by protective walls and emanating an oppressive atmosphere. Eldo approaches a suspension bridge swinging violently over a fast river. He prepares to cross it carefully, when a man's voice booms, ordering him to stay put. Eldo turns in surprise to see a stranger standing guard at the village entrance. The man asks Eldo to state his rank and reason for coming to Eris. Eldo raises his head confidently, declaring that he is a D rank and that he came because he heard about numerous monster taming quests in the area. The guard sighs, rubbing his face, and tells Eldo that the information is outdated. While there are still monsters and plenty of quests, he warns that a large number of hungry ogres have recently appeared, making the area far more dangerous than expected. Eldo's eyes widen in surprise as he realizes that the hungry ogres are some of the strongest B-rank monsters. They possess intelligence and can even handle human weapons. The man continues, explaining that these enemies are the most dangerous he's faced so far. If there are many of them, there's likely a boss among them, probably an ogre king. He warns that unlike the lightning dragon, which relied on pinpoint attacks that Eldo could counter by steadily increasing his power, defeating these ogres through sheer numbers and strength would be far more challenging. Even with his skills, Eldo might struggle to resist. The man adds that if the true boss isn't the Ogre King but an even stronger Ogre Emperor, the danger multiplies. Eldo smiles nervously to himself, thinking perhaps parting ways with Miria wasn't such a good idea. He decides that he will have to act more carefully this time. The guard continues, explaining that the ogres once lived only in the deepest parts of Eris and did not venture into human territories. But because they feed on monsters, they began hunting outside their domain, expanding their range. As a result, remaining monsters fled, pouring into the areas near Eris. Many adventurers came to handle these monsters, but then the hungry ogres attacked. The guard admits he doesn't want to see Eldo sacrificed but can't talk him out of it either. If Eldo ventures into the forest, he must be extremely careful, especially at night. Eldo thanks the man for the information and watches as he returns to the city, moving among the old houses and weary, gloomy townspeople. The guard comments awkwardly that the city feels somber, though it's not surprising given the looming threat of monsters across the river. Eldo notes that the mass appearance of the ogres is something ordinary adventurers could never handle, and if left unchecked, they would devastate the area. With a firm resolve, he makes his way to the Eris Guild office, ready to confront the challenge ahead. Eldo walks in loudly greeting everyone, saying he heard there were tasks to take on. He looks at the board full of assignments while a man explains that there are plenty of tasks, though most are simple. A girl interrupts, asking if he's an adventurer and whether he wants to try any of them. Eldo nods, saying he wants something more challenging. She asks if he's confident in his abilities, and he shrugs, saying more or less. She holds up a paper and shouts, showing him a task that involves taming monsters. Then she smiles and explains it properly. The task is to kill the creatures and bring back their remains as proof. The man takes the paper, and Eldo mutters that it's a desperate task, mentioning that he heard ogres have already driven away most of the monsters. The girl admits there are fewer monsters now, but there's still a problem, adding that the risk of running into ogres makes it too dangerous for ordinary adventurers. She urges Eldo, saying that if he's truly strong, he should at least try to kill one monster. Eldo agrees to take on the task, saying it's more useful than the usual ones since he can kill any monster. The girl cheers happily, grateful for his willingness, and Eldo heads toward the exit, announcing he's going hunting. She calls after him to take care of himself. At the gate, the man is surprised and asks if he really took the task. Eldo confirms, saying he'll start with the one that allows him to hunt any monster, and plans to inspect the forest first. The man warns him to be careful and return immediately if anything goes wrong, reminding him that once he dies, it'll be too late to help. Eldo shrugs, saying he'll go back if it's dangerous, then crosses the suspension bridge and enters the forest, determined to face whatever comes. As he walks deeper, he nervously notes that he hasn't seen any monsters and wonders if ogres really ate them all. He decides to start with invisibility and magic search, but his words are cut off by a growl from the bushes. An ogre emerges holding a struggling fox. Eldo and the creature stare at each other, and he smiles at the unexpected encounter. The ogre devours the fox, spitting the blood toward Eldo. His eyes widen in shock, but he dodges in time and rushes forward to confront the monster. Eldo quickly forms a magic circle and unleashes a defensive spell, but the ogre smashes through it with a single strike, sending him flying across the clearing. The boy watches in shock as the massive creature stands tall, lifting its axe to strike again. He shouts for Eldo not to get overconfident. Brushing off the impact, Eldo rises and casts a sticky bomb spell, trapping the ogre's hand against a tree trunk. His staff begins to glow intensely, and the boy yells that now it's Eldo's turn to take control. Eldo channels his power into a spell called Flame Column, engulfing the ogre entirely in roaring fire. Only the outline of the beast is visible through the blaze. It screams in pain and collapses, searing heat rippling through the forest. For a moment it seems over, but the ogre suddenly flings its eyes open and bolts into the trees. Eldo's surprise is audible. Was the ogre retreating, or was it chasing its kin? Acting quickly, the boy stretches out his hand and hurls a massive fireball, a spell called Fire Sphere, striking the fleeing ogre. The creature screams again before collapsing into the grass, motionless. Eldo studies the defeated foe thoughtfully. The ogre had reasoned, a rare display of intelligence for a monster. If it had called its allies, things could have turned disastrous. Eldo glances at the clear sky and muses that without Miria nearby, he'll need a long time for his magic to recharge, making restraint crucial when wielding such overwhelming power. The boy adds that this is exactly why they must act fast and finish the fight quickly. Eldo stares at the smoldering remains of the ogre, reflecting for a moment. The flame column alone should have sufficed, yet something feels off. Perhaps this creature held a higher status than its usual kind, or maybe there's another force at play. A low growl rumbles from the forest, pulling Eldo's attention back to the looming threat. Eldo suddenly notices movement in the bushes. 3 wolves burst out, sprinting past him without even a glance. Their ragged breathing shows they're exhausted, yet they keep running. Eldo frowns, realizing they weren't fleeing from him at all. They were running from something much more terrifying. Before he can think further, an axe comes flying past his head and slams into a nearby tree. Eldo flinches, shouting that this is seriously dangerous. He turns toward the source of the attack and sees 5 massive ogres glaring at him, each holding a different weapon. Eldo sighs with a weary smile, muttering that of all the ways to meet, this was one of the worst. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the focus shifts to the Adventurers Guild. At the reception desk, a young secretary named Teresa yawns and complains about how boring her shift is. Her boredom doesn't last long. Her superior storms in, a tall woman with sharp glasses and a strict demeanor. She scolds Teresa loudly, reminding her that the reception desk is the face of the guild. As the head of the Iria branch, she refuses to tolerate such careless behavior. Adjusting her glasses, she even threatens to accept Teresa's resignation letter if this attitude continues. The scolding continues as the branch head brings up a recent issue. She says she heard Teresa was involved with Eldo, the adventurer she had accompanied during her duty. Tasks that didn't match his rank had been given, and if the guild's rating dropped because of such reckless decisions, it could cause serious problems. Teresa stammers, unsure of what to say, then falls silent. Deep down, she knows it's safer to stay quiet. What no one realizes is that Teresa actually possesses a rare ability called Future Eye. Though she hasn't mastered it, this gift allows her to glimpse the potential growth of adventurers, seeing faint colors that reflect the possibility of their rank increasing. She uses these glimpses to assign fitting tasks to those who come through the guild. Of course, no one would ever believe her if she explained it, so she keeps it hidden. As Teresa stands silently, the door opens and the guild instructor steps inside. He watches the scene unfold, quietly observing as the branch head continues to scold her subordinate. The instructor calmly explains that it's not surprising Teresa seems relaxed after meeting Eldo. Compared to him, most adventurers look like inexperienced children. The branch head doesn't take it well and accuses the instructor of conspiring with Teresa. Before the argument can continue, the guild doors burst open. A young man steps inside, loudly greeting everyone with a wide grin. He boasts that he'll become a prominent figure in the future and demands a quest above C rank to prove it. Teresa watches him closely and quickly judges that his parameters are nothing special. His potential is mediocre at best, completely incomparable to Eldo. In her mind, they have nothing in common. The instructor sizes the boy up, unimpressed by his overconfidence. He tells the newcomer that before anything else, he has to fight him. It's part of the adventurer registration test. The boy smirks and asks if he's serious, proudly declaring himself a warrior. The instructor responds with a faint smile, saying that profession isn't what decides true strength. The boy shouts back that he won't complain later, and they both head into the battle arena. 5 minutes later, the results are obvious. The instructor steps out without a single scratch, while the boy staggers out battered and bruised, his face swollen and covered in bumps. The instructor dismisses him with a warning to come back only after he's ready. The guild staff escorts the defeated adventurer out. Afterward, the instructor admits that everything feels boring now. Once you've met someone like Eldo, regular challengers just don't compare. Teresa looks at him in surprise when he adds that Eldo might be the strongest newcomer he's ever encountered, someone he might never see again in his lifetime. Teresa glances at both her boss and the instructor before speaking up with certainty. She says she's made her decision. At the end of her shift today, she'll submit her resignation letter. The branch head yells in shock, while the instructor asks if she's leaving to follow Eldo. Teresa smiles and nods, saying yes, because life just feels more interesting with Eldo around. The guild branch head, still flustered, forces a smile and tells Teresa that if she does meet Eldo, she should tell him the guild hasn't been sitting still. But when Teresa turns to leave, the boss suddenly shouts for her to wait, demanding to know if she's truly serious about quitting. By then, Teresa already has her backpack packed and slung over her shoulders. Without another word, she walks out of the guild, determined to track Eldo down. Elsewhere, Eldo has his own encounter with Mina, the sharp-minded head of the Masha Trading Company. He stares in shock when she reveals that the staff she's offering costs 25 million gil. Mina only smiles and tells him it isn't necessary to pay in cash. Instead, she wants his guild membership number, written on the back of his adventurer's card. She's willing to pay 30 million gil for it immediately. Before she can even finish, Eldo cuts in, agreeing to her offer with a mix of surprise and amusement. Mina hands him a heavy bag of coins and tells him the 5 million gil inside is his change. Eldo awkwardly points out that she's even returning change like it's a simple shop purchase, something he'd expect only from the head of a trading company. With that, he accepts the staff and heads out, while Mina watches quietly from her window, smiling faintly as he disappears down the street. Moments later, her maid steps in and asks if she's really sure about this decision. Mina tilts her head, amused, and asks what she means. The maid nervously explains that the price she claimed for a membership number was a lie. Even for an A-rank adventurer, it would only cost around 15 million gil, half of what she had given Eldo. Mina's expression softens into a knowing smile. She admits openly that of course it was on purpose. Back at the trading company, Mina sits in thought before deciding to reward Eldo even further for the work he had done. She says she's considering starting with an additional billion gil. Her assistant gasps, shocked at the figure, asking if she isn't giving far too much. But Mina calmly shakes her head. To her, it's actually too little. Eldo had already brought benefits more than 10 times greater than the money she had invested. With a wide smile, she declares that it's worth taking the risk. The assistant looks at her in awe. Whenever Mina spoke of taking a risk, she was never wrong. If she said it, then it was as good as certain. Accepting the order, the maid nods, saying she understands and will prepare everything right away. Mina thanks her and sits down by the window, her eyes drifting to a small bottle containing a pale green liquid. It's a spiritual potion, an elixir she had prepared herself. Staring at it, Mina reflects on Eldo's achievements. He had already slain a dragon, and she whispers to herself that he will definitely become the strongest adventurer in the world. Then, with a laugh, she corrects herself. No, he already is. Looking up at the sky, Mina smiles broadly, anticipation shining in her eyes as she looks forward to their next meeting. Meanwhile, far away, the 5 ogres bear down on Eldo. Their grotesque grins stretch wide, sharp teeth gleaming as they move with surprising speed. Eldo tenses, realizing they're faster than he expected. If he hesitates for even a moment, he knows it'll be over. He scans the surroundings and spots a narrow passage between 2 high cliffs. Without wasting time, he dashes toward it, baiting the monsters to follow. As he runs, Eldo shouts taunts back at them, daring them to chase him further. The ogres roar in excitement, certain of their victory, and charge after him. Once they're on the narrow path, Eldo raises his staff and ignites the ground in flames, sealing off both the entrance and the exit. The monsters are trapped. Eldo glares at them, fury burning in his eyes. He declares that he'll finish them in a single strike. Channeling his magic, he calls down a flame column and amplifies it 5-fold. A blazing torrent erupts, engulfing the path. The ogres howl in agony as the searing fire devours them, thrashing desperately but unable to break through the wall of flames. Eldo yells for the monsters to stop and hurls a fireball straight into their ranks. The blast knocks the ogres to the ground, and for a moment he thinks it's all over. but from within the smoke, one survivor suddenly leaps out. Eldo's eyes widen in shock. This one is still alive. The ogre swings down with brutal force, but Eldo reacts instantly, driving his sword into its body. The beast lets out a final cry before collapsing motionless at his feet. Catching his breath, Eldo scans the battlefield, making sure no other ogres remain. Finally satisfied, he exhales heavily. He mutters that it's been a long time since he last used his sword, but even so, that last ogre was clearly stronger than the rest. He recalls that in BBO, monsters were often differentiated by body hardness, and now it seems the same applies here. And just like with the Garden of Despair, there's no underestimating such foes. Shaking his head, he tells himself to stay focused. Standing at the forest's edge, Eldo activates Magic Search to check the surroundings. Detecting no presence nearby, he follows up with Magic Invisibility, cloaking himself completely. Pleased with the result, he prepares to move, but suddenly a loud explosion shakes the area. Without wasting time, Eldo summons a magic circle beneath the fallen ogres, transferring their corpses to the guild as proof of subjugation. He counts about 20 in total and decides it's best to return while he still has enough magic power left. Crossing a suspension bridge on his way back into town, a lookout spots him and shouts in relief that Eldo managed to return safely, assuming he had avoided the ogres. Eldo corrects him immediately, raising his voice to announce that he didn't avoid them, he fought them head-on. In fact, he's already killed about 25. The lookout stares at him in disbelief, insisting such monsters are impossible to defeat. But before he can argue further, a cheerful voice cuts in from the guild. A girl exclaims excitedly that Eldo actually killed them, calling it incredible since no one has ever done it before. She rushes over, looking him up and down for proof, but then frowns in disappointment. It seems he hasn't brought any evidence of the elimination. Eldo awkwardly admits that it's true, he did collect the ogres using one of his abilities. The guild girl blinks in confusion and asks what he means by collected. Eldo answers casually, then opens a glowing portal. To her horror, the bodies of ogres begin tumbling out one after another. She screams in shock, demanding to know why ogres are suddenly here. Eldo calmly explains that it's magic gathering, a spell that lets him store defeated monsters in another space. The girl stares at the pile in disbelief as Eldo counts them aloud, 25 in total. Her jaw drops, and she stammers that he actually killed 25 ogres by himself. Shaking her head, she mutters that she doesn't understand any of this anymore, and hurries off to call the department head. Eldo watches her leave, a little uneasy. Maybe he's attracting too much attention after all. He remembers what Milia once told him: lower professions aren't well liked, especially among rookies. But if he wants to raise his rank, then sometimes standing out and showing his worth is the only way forward. With that thought lingering, he waits quietly until the girl rushes back, apologizing for the delay. She says there isn't enough space here and asks Eldo to follow her to the warehouse. He agrees. They arrive at a massive gate leading into a wide cavern used for storage. Smiling, the girl tells him this is the guild's monster warehouse. Inside, Eldo looks around and remarks on how spacious it is. She grins, explaining that it has to be, since their area is constantly plagued by monsters. A man appears and greets them warmly, overjoyed to see Eldo. He introduces himself as Jazz, the head of the Jika's branch, and thanks Eldo for coming. He admits he never thought anyone could defeat so many ogres, and asks if Eldo is really the adventurer responsible. Eldo nods, saying they can begin transporting the corpses immediately. Jazz happily agrees. The guild girl turns to her superior with a playful grin and says he's about to witness something amazing. Curious, Jazz raises a brow and asks what she means. Eldo steps forward, opens a shimmering portal, and unleashes the heap of ogre corpses into the warehouse. Jazz recoils in shock, eyes wide at the sheer number. Eldo explains with a small smile that these are the hungry ogres he killed earlier that day, all preserved with magic gathering, a skill that allows him to store objects and creatures in another dimension. Jacus flips through his book, frowning in confusion. He admits this is the first time he's hearing about Eldo, and the guild database has no record of him. Jazz shouts excitedly, calling it the discovery of the century. He's thrilled. Eldo has uncovered something extraordinary. He asks if he can report it to the guild headquarters. Eldo leans forward, intrigued, and asks what would happen if Jazz did. Jacus explains that the ability would first undergo a thorough study within the guild, and once fully evaluated over several years, it would be made publicly available. The reward for such a discovery would be enormous. Eldo thinks that thanks to Mina, he doesn't really need money, but spreading this ability would make hunting far easier for adventurers. The boy adds that this would certainly be a good thing. Eldo tells Zekum, the head of the department, that it's fine for Jazz to report it, and Zekum expresses his gratitude. Eldo muses that if the ability becomes widespread, the guild will no longer be surprised every time he uses it. Moreover, if adventurers master it, dealing with associations like the Garden of Despair would become much simpler. Jacus admits he now owes Eldo a debt, and Eldo listens with a smile. Jacus shifts the conversation, saying they can talk about something else now. He'll take the ogres from Eldo and show the guild card. Eldo nods, and Zekum smiles, remarking that discovering the ability and taming the ogres is exactly what one would expect from a D-rank rookie. Jacus freezes in shock for a moment, then shouts, insisting he really is a rookie. Zekum questions if there's a mistake. Eldo calmly explains that it's true, he's a wizard, but the profession Ball has labeled him a newbie. His real profession is actually a sage. Zekum asks if being treated as a newbie means the profession Ball didn't register properly. Eldo confirms that it did, though he hadn't tried using it before. Curious, Eldo asks if he could still use the abilities of a wizard and whether there's a way to be recognized as one. Jacus looks at his guild card sadly. The profession Ball is the only way to register a profession now, there are no alternatives. Eldo, intrigued, asks if it was possible before, and Jacus nods quietly. Zekum replies that ever since Cardinal Georges came to power, professions have been tightly regulated. Titles like hero or saint, once highly respected, are now treated as inferior and can even be grounds for discrimination. He apologizes, saying he has little power to change the system. Eldo waves it off, saying there's no need to worry. He wasn't asking the impossible from him. In his mind, the name Cardinal Georges rings a bell. If this was the person responsible for demoting formerly prestigious professions, Eldo decides he wants to meet him someday and have a conversation. He tightens his grip on his staff, realizing that depending on the outcome, he might have to use the knowledge from the VVO for harsher measures. Jum studies the map carefully and says that while he can help Eldo with his profession, he can likely raise his rank to C. Eldo asks what he recommends to achieve that promotion. Zekum explains that advancing in rank requires recommendations from 3 branch heads, and Eldo already has 2. The first came from the branch head in Zia, and the second from the head of the Capitals Department, who rarely gives recommendations. Eldo wonders aloud how he managed to get that. Zekum recalls that Eldo had completed a task for the Masha Trading Company, hinting that Mina may have been involved in securing the recommendation. He adds that once the recommendation is submitted, Eldo can raise his rank. Eldo expresses gratitude but emphasizes that he wants to do it as soon as possible. Zekum sighs with disappointment, noting that with Eldo's current accomplishments, rank C is still not enough. He grumbles about the discriminatory system, lamenting how promotions are still unfairly tied to professions. The girl screams in alarm, warning Eldo not to say that aloud. Jackum shifts uncomfortably and asks him not to tell anyone what he just heard. If the higher-ups found out, he'd definitely be fired. Eldo nods, saying that's fine. Zekum adds that despite the guild's disdainful attitude, a rank can still be raised if someone has serious merits. In that case, one could even apply to the main headquarters. Eldo's eyes widen in surprise, and he asks curiously what would happen if he were to destroy all the ogres here. The girl and Zekum both stare at him in shock. Zekum can't believe it, shouting that such a thing is impossible. Zekum, however, smiles faintly and thanks Eldo for at least trying to do something. The girl happily shouts that if Eldo manages to defeat the ogres, he would most likely be allowed to stay. Zekum confirms she's right. Eldo asks with interest whether the ogres really caused that much damage. Zekum admits that yes, they do, but the real problem lies elsewhere. Jackum explains that the issue is with resettlement. Eldo presses for details, and Jackum continues, the capital has proposed relocating the city entirely. If the ogres cannot be defeated, the order is to carry out the relocation. No one is happy about it, especially the locals. Eldo asks what he means, and Zekum explains that many elderly people live in the city. Even if they move, the ogres would still attack the old city, and the residents would be in danger. Jackum adds angrily that this plan might actually be more convenient for the higher-ups. Eldo questions this, wondering if the capital is really trying to save them. Jim shakes his head. No matter how much they consulted the capital, the answer was always the same: the people would have to manage on their own. Jackum finishes, explaining that this relocation plan is simply a whim of the capital's aristocracy. Eldo asked in surprise if this was really just a whim of the aristocracy. Zekum explained that it was because Eris was under the control of Count Magis. He added that the group who hated the Count was trying to destroy the area under the pretext of monster attacks. Eldo asked why Count Magis was hated. Zekum replied that he was a remarkable person who cared even about remote border areas like theirs, earning the love of the residents. However, the ruling aristocracy treated him poorly. Zekum hesitated before adding that Cardinal Georges especially despised him. Eldo thought to himself that it was that man again. Curious, he asked why the aristocrats were fighting each other. Zekum explained that it was because Count Magis resisted the discrimination against lower professions and actively supported them. The Count helped oppress lower-class people from all over the country, inviting them to his estates and giving them work. Eldo realized it was clear why he was disliked. He had opposed the established laws. The boy continued reasoning that this could be useful. If true, Count Magis might be a valuable ally. He told Zekum that he understood the situation and assured them that the city would not have to be abandoned, promising to do everything he could to protect it. Zekum spoke loudly, declaring that they owed Eldo and would prepare a place for him to stay. Eldo smiled and thanked him sincerely. Night had fallen, and Eldo lay in bed, letting out a heavy sigh. He thought about the task ahead, realizing it carried far more responsibility than he had expected. He reasoned that a good night's sleep was necessary to fully restore his magical power for tomorrow. His mind wandered back to the battle with the ogres, recalling the chaotic and ridiculous situations he had faced. Eldo resolved to be more careful tomorrow. Life only offers one chance, and it had to be respected. Outside, the bright moon cast its glow over the land. A man with long hair watched as a cart entered his territory. Another man approached and addressed him as Count Magis, bowing as he apologized for the late report. He explained that the material aid sent to the southeasternmost village had been successfully delivered. Magis acknowledged the work, thanking him. Then the man mentioned an adventurer of a lower profession who had recently achieved a remarkable feat, defeating a sea dragon. Magis smiled, pleased to hear it. The man continued that the adventurer was a rookie of rank F, and while it seemed hard to believe, the Masha Trading Company had confirmed the story. Magis said it was simply wonderful and expressed a desire to meet the adventurer at least once, placing some hope in him. Unbeknownst to Eldo, the Count was talking about him. The next morning, Eldo stepped outside, staff in hand, feeling his magical power fully restored. Zekum and the guild secretary approached, and the girl screamed with joy at the sight of him. Jackum asked if he had rested well, and Eldo thanked them, saying he had. He explained that he would now search for the gathering place of the ogres. Rising above the ground, he took flight. Zekum and the girls stared at the sky in shock. They had never seen someone fly. One of them muttered that he had just taken off and flown, and the other confirmed that he really had.